Young Ren lunges forward with intense focus during his daily sword practice. He engages in a fierce sparring match against his father in a sunlit field. His father skillfully counters the attack and sends the boy tumbling through the air. Crashing into the grass, Ren listens to his father's stern lecture about leaving openings. The exhausted boy lies flat on his back, gasping for breath after the grueling session. His father reaches out to help him up, deciding to end training for the day. Ren remains motionless on the ground, completely drained of all physical energy. A proud smile crosses the father's face as he praises his son's remarkable talent. A solitary butterfly drifts through the tranquil spring air above the countryside. Looking toward the horizon, 7 years have passed since the boy's strange reincarnation. Life unfolds peacefully within a sturdy house located in the powerful Liomel Empire. This remote, nameless village sits nestled under the shadow of a towering, jagged peak. Sheep graze quietly along the wooden fences of the quiet rural settlement. Withered leaves fall from the branches as memories of a previous life resurface. Long ago, the infant Ren struggled desperately to accept his bizarre new reality. His gentle mother leans over the cradle to offer comfort and a warm meal. Cradled in her arms, he eventually abandoned his resistance and embraced this second chance. She tucks him back into his crib while he keeps his secret hidden away. He watches his mother depart from the room as he begins his journey in earnest. Concentrating intensely, infant Ren activates the ornate silver bracelet, fastened tightly around his small wrist. The central gem begins to hum with energy, signaling the awakening of a hidden power. A translucent status window manifests before his eyes, detailing his initial level and available skill sets. He scrutinizes the mysterious interface, noticing that typical numerical stats from his past life are absent. The young boy ponders the specific mechanics of his rare magic sword, summoning ability. He recalls how combining base classes creates powerful, hidden archetypes like the magic swordsman. Vivid memories of unique skills flash through his mind as he assesses his current potential. Ren recognizes that his innate ability belongs to an elite category reserved for the chosen. Focusing his willpower, a small wooden tip begins to sprout from the floorboards of his room. A complete wooden magic sword materializes out of thin air, standing upright before him. Slumping over in his crib, he holds the underwhelming wooden weapon with a look of pure disappointment. He reviews the basic nature magic attached to the blade, deciding not to test it indoors. Imagining a future filled with legendary steel blades, he realizes he must meet specific growth conditions. He looks toward the next milestone, anticipating the unlock of a sturdier iron magic sword. Suddenly, a sharp wave of pain strikes his head as his limited mana reserves run dry. The strain proves too much for his infant body, causing him to collapse into unconsciousness. Despite the physical toll, he continues his secret training sessions to expand his magical capacity. Sitting alone in the quiet room, he sighs at the grueling pace of leveling up manually. His father suddenly bursts through the door, forcing Ren to quickly dissipate the evidence of his practice. Held securely in his father's arms, the boy reflects on how this world mirrors the legends of the 7 heroes. Ren envisions a tragic future where he stands as a lone survivor over a fallen friend. He looks out at the peaceful valley surrounding his village, vowing to prevent such a dark fate. As a toddler, he continues secretly honing his mana by manifesting his wooden magic sword in private. The young boy grows up and spends his time in the library studying the world's history and lore. Sitting with his mother, he focuses on his lessons and masters the art of writing and language. His father returns from a hunt with 2 large boars and suggests Ren start his sword training. Beaming with excitement, the boy eagerly agrees to finally learn the ways of a warrior. He follows his father out to a grassy field, his small feet treading through the tall brush. Facing his father with a practice weapon, Ren is challenged to attack with everything he has. His father smiles and recalls being taught the blade by his own parent in the same manner. Ren readies his weapon, deciding to secretly substitute it with his summoned wooden magic sword for training. Letting out a fierce shout, the young boy charges forward to begin his very first combat session. The tall grass rustles violently as the two clash, creating a whirlwind of motion in the clearing. Ren swings his blade with surprising speed, finding that his movements are incredibly fluid and natural. His father blocks the strike effortlessly, praising his footwork while urging him to keep pushing his body. Breathing heavily, the boy prepares for another round, his eyes fixed on his father's relaxed stance. He marvels at the high physical capabilities of his reincarnated body as the spar continues at pace. Despite his talent, the limitations of his 7-year-old physique begin to weigh heavily on his movements. The session concludes with Ren collapsed in the grass, completely drained after 30 minutes of intense exertion. His father offers words of praise while Ren gasps for breath, asking for a moment to recover. Ren remains slumped on the grass as his father walks away, promising to return for him shortly. Catching his breath, the young boy looks down at the glowing interface manifesting around his wrist. He grins upon seeing a notification that his mastery has increased by 2 points for using the magic sword. From that day forward, afternoon sword training with his father becomes a steady part of his daily routine. A brief transition marks a shift in his understanding of the world's hidden mechanics and magical items. He reflects on how magic stones harvested from monsters are the key to upgrading his summoned weapons. Recalling a time when his father handed him a stone, he remembers the lack of any magical reaction. A system message clarifies that stones not obtained through his own combat cannot be utilized for growth. Ren grits his teeth, accepting that this reality requires genuine effort rather than simple shortcuts or gifts. The seasons begin to change as the local villagers continue their peaceful work tending to the livestock. A farmer guides his oxen through the dirt, illustrating the slow and steady passage of time in the valley. Months fly by while the neighbors enjoy the quiet life, oblivious to the young boy's rigorous secret training. A wooden practice blade cuts through the air with a sharp whistle, signaling another intense sparring match. Under the watchful eyes of the farm animals, Ren and his father clash in the middle of the field. Although he is sweating profusely, the boy maintains a steady grip and keeps his eyes locked on his target. His father notices the improvement, remarking on how much his stamina and physical endurance have grown recently. The veteran warrior suddenly shifts his weight, sliding past Ren's guard during a particularly fast exchange of blows. Catching him off balance, the father provides a lesson on center of gravity by sweeping the boy's legs. Ren yelps in surprise as he is sent tumbling backward, his feet flying high into the air. The session ends with his father leaning on his sword, kindly checking to see if the boy is unhurt. Panting heavily on the grass, Ren insists that he can continue training despite his obvious exhaustion. His father responds with a gentle smile, advising the boy to stop before he accidentally causes an injury. The man instructs him to rest until dinner time, while Ren remains hunched over in the field. Watching his father walk away, the young boy weakly calls out his thanks for the day's lesson. He soon checks his status screen, which reveals his magic sword. Summoning mastery has reached 88%. Ren examines the ornate silver bracer on his wrist, realizing a level up is only days away. Collapsing onto his back with a tired grin, he relaxes on the grass beside the family dog. He reflects on how his past life as a gamer makes this difficult physical grind feel rewarding. As evening falls, a large iron pot bubbles over the fire inside their warm and quiet home. Ren's mother takes his hand into hers, looking down at the red blisters and developing calluses. She expresses concern that the training is too harsh, though Ren insists he finds joy in it. While reaching for a jar of ointment, she acknowledges their family's long history of protecting the village. Curiosity takes hold of the boy as he asks his mother if she actually hates the sword. She gently rubs the medicine into his skin, clarifying that her feelings are rooted more in fear. Startled by this revelation, Ren stares at her while questioning exactly what she means by being afraid. A memory flashes back to a younger version of his father, defending her from a ferocious monster. She looks down sadly, explaining how she worries that such reckless bravery might eventually lead to tragedy. The young boy stays silent, finally understanding the heavy burden of anxiety his mother carries every day. She quickly offers a reassuring smile, adding that she still holds the utmost respect for his father's strength. A vision of his father carrying a massive boar into town shows the vital role he plays here. Ren's father scratches his head with a grin, assuring Mireille that she has no reason to worry. Ren looks up with wide, shimmering eyes, clearly touched by his father's display of confidence. He explains that the local monsters are no threat, and that he no longer acts as recklessly as before. Placing a reassuring hand on his wife's shoulder, he emphasizes that the family's happiness comes before everything else. Mireille gazes back at him with a soft, blushing expression as her lingering anxieties begin to fade away. Later that night, Ren lies awake in his bed, with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. He looks out toward the starry night sky, reflecting on the true meaning of having a family. A vision of modern skyscrapers appears as he recalls the cold and distant world of his previous life. He remembers his past parents divorcing early, leaving him to walk a lonely path through a busy street. Although his mother took him in, their bond remained fragile as they walked together in silent shadow. As time went on, communication between them withered away until they were just two silhouettes at a table. After he reached adulthood, his mother eventually stopped returning home entirely, leaving him in complete solitude. Closing his eyes, Ren reflects on the stark difference between that isolation and his current life. He expresses a quiet gratitude for being sent to university, despite the broken state of his past home. Watching his past mother walk away into the distance, he acknowledges that she likely had many personal struggles. He shuts his eyes tightly, choosing to let go of the past and focus on his present reality. The scene fades into a bright morning light as a new day of physical training begins in the field. Ren and his father clash wooden swords with great intensity while a striped cat wanders nearby. The young boy pants heavily and grits his teeth, pushing his body to endure the relentless practice. A powerful strike suddenly knocks him off his feet, sending him crashing onto the dirt with a grunt. Roy stands over the exhausted boy and calls an end to the day's training. Ren falls into a deep, peaceful sleep later that night to recover his strength. The following days are filled with academic studies as he writes diligently under his mother's watchful eye. He balances his mental work with household chores like washing laundry in the yard. Physical conditioning resumes as Roy counts out the final repetitions of a grueling sit-up set. The intensity of their swordplay increases with every passing afternoon. During his rare moments of rest, Ren immerses himself in books alongside a quiet feline companion. Warmth and laughter fill the dining room as the family shares a candlelit meal together. Tranquility settles over the village home as the stars shine brightly in the night sky. Another morning of practice finds Ren crashing into the dirt once again. Roy checks on his son and offers to cut the session short. Gritting his teeth, Ren refuses to quit and insists that he has more left in him. He pushes himself off the ground, shaking with fatigue, but refusing to drop his wooden sword. A sudden spark of internal energy causes his pupils to dilate in shock. Roy pauses the match, asking if the boy has sustained some kind of injury. Ren examines his hands in disbelief, realizing that his entire body suddenly feels weightless. With a determined shout, he lunges across the grass with a burst of speed. He closes the distance in an instant, moving faster than he ever has before. Roy barely manages to raise his sword in time to block the surprisingly heavy impact. Ren stares ahead in pure amazement at the power he just unleashed. Roy reels back in astonishment as he barely deflects a strike that carries unbelievable speed. He immediately challenges Ren to keep the momentum going without taking a single moment to rest. Ren launches himself forward once more, his body becoming a blur of motion across the training field. The boy realizes with a start that his physical power and agility have suddenly reached new heights. Their wooden blades clash repeatedly in a fierce exchange of blows that echoes through the quiet village. Every step they take leaves a trail of flattened grass as the pace of the duel intensifies. Roy struggles to maintain his guard, while wondering how a child could possibly grow this strong so fast. A final, explosive leap from Ren causes his wooden sword to shatter against his father's steady defense. Shock washes over Roy as he stares at the broken remnants of the weapon in total disbelief. The intense training session finally comes to a halt as both father and son catch their breath. Roy suddenly reaches out and grabs Ren, causing the boy to flinch in confusion at the sudden movement. He hoists the small boy high into the air, unable to contain his pride and excitement any longer. Roy boisterously celebrates the discovery that his young son has already become a rare skill holder. Ren remains stunned by the news, his eyes wide as he tries to process his father's exuberant praise. Mireille approaches the pair with a basket in hand, curious about the loud shouting coming from the yard. Roy explains his theory that the boys' skill level must have increased during their grueling practice. A hidden interface confirms that Ren has indeed unlocked a physical ability enhancement after reaching level 2. Roy beams with joy while imagining a future where his son serves as a high-ranking knight in the capital. The parents discuss the possibility of traveling to a nearby church to receive a formal skill appraisal. Ren humbly brushes off the suggestion, insisting that knowing the name of his power is not a priority. Roy and Mireille stare in stunned silence as Ren displays an oddly mature perspective for his age. Ren chuckles while explaining that he simply prefers a peaceful life over the burden of legendary skills. The parents exchange bewildered glances, unable to comprehend their son's lack of ambition for glory. The serene landscape of the valley stretches out as Ren contemplates his desire for a quiet existence. Standing tall, Ren tells his father that he wishes to stay and succeed him in the village. He envisions a future where he and Roy hunt massive beasts together to enrich their small community. A vivid image of father and son slaying monsters side by side illustrates Ren's commitment to protecting them. Mireille watches her son with soft, emotional eyes as his sincere intentions touch her heart deeply. Ren reflects on the past 7 years of warmth and happiness he has shared with his loving family. He acknowledges that his current joy is entirely thanks to the kindness Roy and Mireille provided him. Thoughts of a distant modern city skyline emphasize how much he has changed from his previous life. Clutching his chest in the shadows, he feels a new soul truly taking root within him. With a gentle smile, Ren declares that his only wish is to stay with his parents forever. Roy is moved to the point of speechless emotion by his young son's heartfelt and selfless confession. Overcome with affection, the parents pull Ren into a tight, tearful embrace to show their love. Ren rests his head against his parents, feeling the comforting weight of the family bond he cherished. Standing outside their humble home, the family shares a quiet moment of unity in the afternoon light. The sturdy walls of their house represent the peaceful life Ren is determined to protect at all costs. Looking toward the horizon, he resolves to use his strength to prevent a dark and tragic future. A glimpse of a different, blood-stained path serves as a reminder that he will forge his own destiny. A sprawling mountain range overlooks a quiet valley as the first light of day breaks through. Heavy clouds gather over the high peaks, signaling a shift in the atmosphere of the land. However, a dark premonition lingers in the air as the focus shifts toward an uncertain future. Silent words echo against a void, hinting that the tranquility Ren desires might be short-lived. A young noble girl with flowing hair and a determined gaze grips the hilt of her sword. She rides through a bustling city square on horseback, while commoners watch her pass by. Back in the valley, Ren enjoys a sunny picnic with Roy and Mireille amidst blooming flowers. Meanwhile, a magnificent white fortress stands tall atop a hill in the distant northern territory. The young blonde girl sits alone on a bench, surrounded by a lush garden of roses. Weiss, a seasoned knight in full plate armor, approaches her with a respectful greeting. Looking quite unimpressed, the girl mentions how boring her training session has become. The knight watches her closely, his expression turning grave as he prepares to speak. Several soldiers lie groaned on the pavement after failing to keep up with her skill. She notices his battle-ready attire and questions why he is dressed for a serious journey. Weiss explains that he has received orders to patrol the northwestern region immediately. His voice drops as he reveals that his task is actually a monster subjugation mission. A vision of a creature with rows of jagged, razor-sharp teeth looms in the shadows. The girl's eyes widen with curiosity and concern upon hearing about the dangerous beast. High in the jagged peaks of the mountains, a strange tension ripples through the air. A flock of sheep grazes peacefully on the hillside, unaware of the looming threat. A lone scarecrow stands guard over golden wheat fields as a crow perches on its hat. Local villagers go about their daily lives near the humble stone cottages of the valley. Ren sighs softly while adjusting the silver bracelet that serves as his magical catalyst. Carrying a basket of fruit, he reflects on the years past since his training began. His status screen appears, showing his rank and his level 2 magic sword, summoning skill. The interface notes that reaching level 3 will allow him to manifest 2 swords simultaneously. However, the high experience requirement for his next level indicates that his growth has slowed. Memories of field labor and household chores fill his mind while he eats a fruit. Despite limited time, he continues to practice his swordsmanship against his father whenever possible. A cheerful elderly woman waves to him, noting how early he has started his morning. They walk together along a grassy path, discussing the peaceful life within the village. Ren laughs sheepishly when she mentions his potential to become a legendary knight in the capital. Suddenly, a line of armored knights on horseback appears along the crest of a hill. Ren stops in his tracks, his eyes focusing on the military presence approaching his home. He and the elderly woman watch as the group of riders looms over the valley. The woman's face pales with fear as she identifies them as messengers from the Baron. Shock washes over Ren as he realizes a formal summons might be imminent. A stern, bearded knight leads the procession toward the house while soldiers follow behind. Roy and Mireille step outside to meet the lead knight at their front door. The armored messenger stands firm, offering a polite apology for the sudden and unannounced visit. Roy asks the messenger why someone from the Baron's estate would visit their village. Ren climbs over a wooden fence while holding his basket of eggs, watching the exchange. The lead knight hands over an official document to Roy as Ren observes from afar. The hierarchy, where the Baron serves as the superior to local knights, is explained. Sweat beads on Ren's face as he wonders what could have triggered such a visit. Roy unrolls the scroll and reads its contents with an increasingly grim expression. The messenger reveals that several nearby villages have suffered devastating attacks from a monster. Villagers weep over a fresh grave while the messenger describes the casualties. The carcass of a large beast lies mangled in a field from a recent hunt. The knights explain that they have formed a search party to hunt the creature. Ren stands stunned at the mention of a monster threat requiring a military response. Roy looks toward the knight and asks for the estimated rank of the beast. The veteran knight warns that everyone must be prepared for a D-rank threat. Roy recoils in pure shock upon hearing the high danger level of the monster. Ren considers the ranking system established by the neutral global organization called the Guild. The power scale for monsters ranges from the lowest G rank to legendary S rank. He recalls that D rank foes were equivalent to early game bosses in his previous life. A massive ape-like beast easily overpowers a group of 5 standard knights. Roy questions why such a threat appeared when the region hosts only weak creatures. The knight explains that the cause is under investigation, while more guards are dispatched. A map illustrates the long journey for reinforcements, which will take at least 20 days to arrive. Roy stares in utter disbelief at the news of such a staggering delay for military aid. Mireille looks on with a worried expression as the local defense falls solely on their shoulders. The knight expresses his deep regrets, while urging the villagers to hold out as long as possible. Roy pledges to maintain a strict watch over the forest to prevent any surprise monster attacks. Ren compares the current threat to his knowledge of the legendary 7 Heroes game lore. The commander thanks Roy for the offer and agrees to rest his men for a single hour. Ren rests his chin on his hand, deeply contemplating the identity of the high-ranking monster. Noticing the quiet boy, the knight asks Roy for confirmation regarding his son's identity. Roy introduces Ren and instructs him to show proper respect to the esteemed knight commander. Ren stands completely paralyzed by the realization that he is meeting the region's top military official. Mireille assists the visiting troop by providing buckets of fresh water for their weary horses. Roy treats the soldiers to refreshments while they take their brief respite in the village. The knight commander chats with Ren, who still clutches his basket of gathered eggs tightly. The quiet village home stands under a bright sky as the short meeting concludes. Waving from his saddle, the commander leads his small unit away from the village outskirts. Ren and his parents stand by their home, waving goodbye to the retreating column of knights. The soldiers discuss Ren's age and note he is the same age as a certain young lady. The commander considers the boy's potential as a rare skill holder with promising swordsmanship. He looks ahead with a hardened gaze, hoping the village remains safe until the monster is slain. Ren and his parents stand united as they prepare for the upcoming challenges. Roy raises his arms and declares that things are about to get very busy. Ren curiously asks his father to let him see the monster's formal description. Roy brushes off the concern by mentioning he has soloed D-rank monsters in the past. Ren expresses shock at this feat, while Roy clarifies it happened long ago. The boy marvels at his father's strength, noting it exceeds several standard knights. Hauling a massive net on his back, Roy returns from a successful hunting trip. Several little boars lay defeated on the ground after being caught by the skilled hunter. Ren stares in amazement at the sheer number of creatures his father captured today. Roy explains that these boars serve as delicious bait that attracts more dangerous predators. Ren deduces the strategy is to eliminate the bait to keep larger monsters away. Impressed by the boy's sharp intuition, Roy offers him a proud and confident smile. Roy emphasizes the need to carefully monitor animal tracks and nearby forest paths. Ren nods in understanding, fully committing himself to his father's defensive plan. A jagged stone spire looms over the horizon as the sun begins to shift. Roy ventures deep into the dense woods to continue his solitary patrol and hunt. With a swift strike of his sword, Roy dispatches another boar inside the forest. Carrying the heavy spoils of his labor, Roy makes his way back uphill. The tireless hunter returns to the shadows of the trees during the late afternoon. Roy maintains his vigilant watch until the very last light of day fades away. Smoke drifts from the cottage chimney as night settles over the quiet imperial village. Inside the steaming wooden tub, Ren asks his father if he has been pushing himself too hard lately. Sitting together in the warm water, the boy requests to join the hunts once the monster threat passes. Roy sighs and apologizes for neglecting their usual sword training sessions due to his patrol duties. Ren quickly dismisses the apology, noting that processing all the caught game keeps the whole family busy. Leaning his head back, the hunter warmly thanks his son for supporting his mother during these hectic days. The young boy gazes silently at the ripples in the bath, lost in his own private thoughts. He secretly hopes that their peaceful daily life will continue without any further interruptions or danger. While Roy stretches out to relax his aching muscles, Ren remains vigilant of his father's growing fatigue. The exhausted hunter closes his eyes and lets the soothing heat wash away the day's heavy burdens. Ren continues to watch over his father with a mixture of admiration and deepening concern. As the moon rises higher, the boy warns Roy not to fall asleep in the water before they finish. The steam from the bath gradually fades away into the cold air of the following mornings. Roy soon returns to the dark threshold of the forest to maintain his solitary defensive watch. Time passes steadily under the watchful gaze of a bright and glowing full moon. The valley remains shrouded in silence as the 10th night of the intense patrol begins. Carrying a heavy bundle of firewood, Ren stops in the middle of the room with a worried expression. The boy approaches his mother in the kitchen to discuss his father's unusually long absence. He points out that Roy is much later than usual and should have returned home by now. Mireille stops her work and decides to head outside to search for her husband in the darkness. Ren insists on accompanying his mother because venturing out alone is far too dangerous. He raises his voice, determined to protect her regardless of the risks. Mireille gazes at her son with a look of surprise and quiet realization. She briefly turns her head away, overcome by a sudden wave of emotion. The mother admits she is constantly terrified of a tragic accident occurring. Ren stares back silently as she shares her deepest anxieties about his father. A wooden torch is ignited to pierce through the heavy cloak of night. The two set out into the wilderness with their lights held high. Mireille gestures toward a specific point of light glowing in the distance. She clarifies that those are the stationary torches at the bridge's entrance. The long suspension bridge stretches precariously over a wide and rocky river. They arrive at the boundary that separates their village from the monster territory. Mireille pauses and focuses her vision on a shape across the ravine. The bridge's wooden planks lead directly into the dark heart of the forest. A slumped figure appears beneath the heavy branches of a massive tree. Mireille lifts her torch and shouts for her husband in the darkness. The quiet silhouette remains unmoving while leaning against the rough bark. Roy begins to shift slightly as the flickering light reveals his location. Both Ren and his mother look on with expressions of pure relief. The exhausted hunter remains seated under the tree as his family draws near. Ren looks on in shock, questioning how his father ended up in such a remote location. Mireille commands her son to stay back while she sprints ahead toward the slumped figure. The two of them race across the swaying wooden bridge as the dark river rushes below. They finally reach the far side, where Mireille calls out frantically to her husband. Her eyes widen in sheer horror as she realizes the severity of the situation. Roy sits motionless against a tree, with blood staining his clothes and his face pale. Ren lets out a desperate cry for his father upon seeing the grim sight. The battered hunter breathes heavily, with blood trickling from his mouth as his consciousness fades. A jagged stone spire looms over the forest under the cold light of the moon. The family gathers under the massive tree, while Mireille tries to wake her unresponsive husband. A sudden rustle in the nearby bushes signals that something is moving through the undergrowth. Ren instantly senses the approaching danger and breaks into a cold sweat while looking around. He draws his blade and moves to defend his parents from an unseen threat. Holding his torch high, the young boy scans the impenetrable darkness for any sign of movement. A ferocious monster boar with jagged tusks suddenly lunges out from the shadows with its mouth agape. Ren braces himself for the impact as the beast charges directly at him with terrifying speed. The massive creature pins him to the ground, while Mireille watches the struggle in paralyzed fear. Ren uses his sword to keep the snapping jaws of the beast away from his face. The powerful monster stands over its prey, while the boy fights desperately to survive the ambush. Mireille attempts to strike the beast as Ren shouts for her to escape and save herself. Two more ferocious boars emerge from the dense foliage to join the fray. Mireille stands frozen with her torch as she realizes they are now outnumbered. Ren continues to struggle beneath the weight of the primary attacker's snapping jaws. He exerts every ounce of his strength to shove the massive beast upward. The young boy looks on in disbelief as the creature's weight begins to yield. He recognizes the sudden surge of power from his internal physical enhancement skill. With a powerful heave, Ren sends the monster boar reeling backward onto the dirt. The boy quickly regains his footing, while his mother watches the unfolding battle. One of the reinforcements lunges toward Mireille, with its tusks bared and ready. Ren moves with blinding speed and a fierce expression to intercept the beast. He brings his sword down in a shimmering arc that catches the charging monster. The impact sends a shockwave through the air as the beast squeals in pain. Shocked by his own lethality, Ren notes that he downed it with one strike. The last remaining attacker snaps its jaws and leaps at the boy from behind. Ren pivots and delivers a crushing blow that halts the creature's momentum entirely. His eyes narrow as he fully commits to the survival of his family. The defeated monsters are sent tumbling across the clearing in a cloud of dust. The sole survivor pauses and stares at the boy with visible, animalistic fear. It quickly decides to flee into the safety of the dark woods to escape. Ren breathes heavily while standing guard as Mireille returns to Roy's side. Ren reflects on how his training and skills have made him unexpectedly powerful. The morning sun begins to rise over the jagged mountain peaks surrounding the valley. Light clouds drift lazily across a pale and tranquil sky as the day begins. Their modest country home stands quietly on a hill overlooking the peaceful rural landscape. A hand carefully reaches for medicinal tools on a table filled with jars and bowls. The elderly village doctor wipes sweat from her brow after a long night of labor. She informs Mireille and Ren that Roy has finally stabilized, despite the severity of his wounds. Mireille's eyes well up with tears of immense relief upon hearing the hopeful medical update. She places a comforting hand on Ren's shoulder to thank him for helping save his father. Ren remains silent with a somber expression as he contemplates the events of the night. He realizes that ordinary boars should never have been able to wound a skilled warrior like Roy. His father remains unconscious, with bandages wrapped tightly around his head while resting in bed. The boy suspects that Roy must have encountered a far more dangerous monster currently being hunted. His gaze hardens as he considers the true threat lurking within the shadows of the forest. The massive needle-like stone spire towers over the distant woods, like a grim, silent omen. Knights on horseback remain stationed far away, while reinforcements are still 10 days from arriving. Ren imagines the horrific possibility of a beast entering the village and cornering defenseless citizens. A vision of his mother being attacked flashes through his mind and fuels his growing anxiety. He looks down and clenches his jaw while resolving to protect his family at any cost. The bright sky mirrors his resolve as he decides that he must take immediate action. Ren crosses a sturdy wooden suspension bridge that hangs high over the rushing river currents. His heavy black boots make a soft thud as he steps onto the dry forest floor. He soon discovers the carcass of the little boar he defeated lying undisturbed in a clearing. Kneeling beside the beast, he feels relieved that no other monsters have claimed the prize yet. Suddenly, two ethereal wisps of white mana begin to drift upward from the monster's remains. Ren watches in total bewilderment as the strange energy reacts to his presence. Bright streaks of light suddenly fly across the air toward the boy's outstretched arm. The ornate silver bracelet on his wrist begins to glow as it absorbs the drifting mana. A translucent status window appears to show a significant increase in his sword summoning proficiency. He stares at the bracelet with wide eyes, confirming that his skills are growing stronger. The boy concludes that the artifact must be draining magic power directly from the creature's core. He effortlessly carries both boar carcasses back toward the village while reflecting on his new strength. The sun eventually sets, leaving the Ashton family home, shrouded in the quiet darkness of night. Inside the house, Ren approaches his mother to speak with her about a very serious matter. He looks her in the eye and declares his intention to take over Roy's duties. Mireille turns toward him with a look of pure shock and growing concern for her son. Ren calmly admits that he understands the dangers, but remains committed to his plan. He gazes toward the distant mountains, while explaining his duty to protect their peaceful village. His mother protests loudly, reminding him that he is far too young for such a burden. Ren casts his gaze downward, while insisting he must act now that his father has fallen. The chapter logo appears prominently against a stark white background. Elderly villagers gather nearby, with expressions of deep sorrow and concern. Mireille remains silent as she processes her son's bold request with heavy eyes. Ren lowers his head slightly while asking his mother to grant him this one favor. He promises to defend the entire village until the necessary reinforcements finally arrive. Mireille watches him with a mixture of grief and hesitant understanding. The dark night sky stretches over the village as silence falls upon the land. Mireille sits faithfully by Roy's bedside while he recovers from his severe wounds. A small bird chirps atop a wooden fence as the morning sun rises. Mireille hands a packed lunch to Ren after reluctantly agreeing to his departure. The young boy ventures back into the woods with a bag strapped to his side. His mother warns him never to go too deep into the dangerous forest. Ren repeats the name of the landmark he must use for navigation. A massive rock formation, shaped like a giant blade, pierces the forest canopy. He draws his magic sword while considering the potential for testing new abilities. Ren recalls legends of powerful heroes who once wielded the same natural magic. Sudden rustling sounds erupt from the dense bushes nearby. The boy's eyes widen in shock as he senses an immediate threat approaching. A fierce wild boar charges out from the greenery with bared tusks. Ren quickly readies his weapon to face the charging beast once again. Ren aims his sword while focusing on the incantations for roots and vines. Small green sprouts immediately push through the forest soil at his feet. Thick vines surge from the earth to instantly entangle the charging wild boar. The young boy gasps in genuine shock at the effectiveness of his ability. The captured beast remains completely immobilized within a dense cluster of foliage. Ren looks on with a hesitant expression while considering the creature's suffering. He resolves to deliver a single finishing strike for a merciful death. Noting the significant mana consumption, he appreciates the utility of his nature spells. Several more small boars emerge from the bushes to continue the confrontation. The young boy persists with his training routine to master his new abilities. The vast mountain range looms under a bright sky as the day progresses. He binds the fallen prey together, using the durable vines he summoned earlier. Two villagers stop their work to stare in complete disbelief at the boy. On his first day, Ren drags a massive haul of 12 boars home. The young warrior ventures back into the dense woods early the next morning. He continues his efficient work by striking down more beasts with swift movements. For a second time, he delivers a pile of 12 carcasses to his village. Taking a brief moment of rest, he enjoys a simple meal among the trees. He increases his hunting tally further while hauling an enormous bundle of prey. By the 5th day, his consistent efforts provide the village with an incredible abundance. The sun begins to set over the jagged peaks of the distant mountain range. Ren stands victoriously before his latest haul secured within a web of thick vines. His status window reveals that his wooden magic sword proficiency has almost reached its limit. He wipes sweat from his brow while anticipating the impending unlock of a superior iron blade. The young boy finally returns to the familiar sight of his family's quiet countryside home. Stepping through the doorway, he announces his arrival to the silent and empty hallway. He suddenly encounters a frantic scene as the village healer speaks urgently with his mother. A look of pure dread washes over Ren's face as he senses something is terribly wrong. He rushes forward to demand answers regarding his father's health and current state. His mother stares at the floor with a pained expression while clutching her chest. She explains through her grief that his father's condition took a turn for the worse. The man lies unconscious and struggling for every breath upon his sickbed. Ren cries out in absolute shock after hearing the devastating news of the relapse. His mother breaks down in tears while admitting she has no idea how this happened. A heavy silence fills the room as a desperate realization begins to take hold. Holding a single leaf, the healer notes their medicinal supplies are nearly depleted. The mother weeps even harder, knowing their remaining herbs will not last through the night. Ren narrows his eyes in sharp focus as he processes the life or death crisis. The healer commands the mother to fetch a compounding box from her nearby home immediately. She quickly agrees and rushes out the door to fulfill the urgent request. Ren stares in stunned silence as the gravity of the medical crisis sinks in. His gaze lingers on his father, who remains unconscious and pale. The boy urgently asks the village healer if any medicinal herbs grow nearby. Rig sadly explains that the specific plants were wiped out years ago. Hearing that the life-saving medicine is extinct leaves Ren in complete shock. He examines the single star-shaped leaf resting upon the small bedside table. The healer asks him to wait outside while she continues the treatment. Walking alone through the dim hallway, Ren's mind races with hidden knowledge. He stops to consider a memory from the game of his previous life. The rondo grass is a recovery item he used countless times before. He questions if the plant is truly gone or just hidden away. His focus shifts toward the jagged silhouette of the distant mountain peak. Despite knowing the nighttime forest is incredibly dangerous, his resolve hardens. The boy suddenly sprints across the open fields toward the mountain range. Grit and desperation mark his face as he runs through the dark. The memory of his father's struggling breath fuels his rapid pace. He races toward the towering spire of Sword Rock under the moonlight. Pushing through thick undergrowth, he refuses to sit still while time runs out. Dark shadows of forest creatures watch him from the branches above. Ren continues his frantic dash into the wilderness while gasping for air. Ren pushes through the dense forest while branches snap around him. Finally arriving at the looming base of the monolithic Sword Rock, the boy tilts his head back to gaze at the vertical spire, catching his breath while sweat drips down his determined face. He searches through the misty lowlands at the foot of the stone, looking up at the impossible height he must somehow conquer. A single small vine clinging to the rock catches his eye. He sighs with disappointment upon finding no medicinal herbs at the base. Resting his hand on his sword, he considers using nature magic. Thick vines suddenly sprout and coil upward along the jagged surface. Ren grips the magical plants and begins his treacherous vertical ascent. The crescent moon watches over him as he climbs higher into the night. A cluster of leaves appears on a ledge just above his reach. Pulling himself up with straining muscles, he nears the plateau. His fingers lock onto the rocky edge for the final pull. He gasps in realization upon seeing a lush field of rondo grass. The rare medicinal plants glow softly atop the moonlit peak. Ren joyfully begins harvesting the leaves to save his father. His expression freezes in sudden terror at a grisly discovery. Scattered animal bones and a sun-bleached skull lie hidden among the grass. Noticing the bones aren't alone, Ren spots shattered jewelry scattered among the remains. A cold sweat breaks out on his forehead as the realization sinks in. He quickly begins his descent back down the cliffside using the magical vines. Landing on the ground, he maintains a low profile while moving through the brush. Drawing his short sword, he runs toward the forest edge to escape the peak. Suddenly, a trio of aggressive wild boars leaps from the foliage to block him. The beasts snarl with bared tusks as they surround the young boy. Ren identifies them as little boars and prepares for an immediate fight. The monsters lunge forward with surprising speed to gore their target. With a single powerful horizontal slash, Ren sends the three boars flying backward. The impact tosses the heavy creatures through the air like mere toys. He lowers his blade but feels a lingering sense of unease about their behavior. Looking at the fleeing animals, he suspects they were running from something far worse. A low, guttural growl vibrates from a set of massive, razor-sharp jaws nearby. Ren's pupils dilate with pure instinctual fear at the overwhelming pressure. He turns slowly to face the looming shadow atop a nearby rock formation. A colossal, multi-tailed wolf silhouette stands tall against the dim night sky. He recognizes the beast as the legendary monster currently being hunted by knights. The creature's long tails whip through the air beneath the glowing crescent moon. The six-eyed predator stares down at the boy and prepares to strike. Identified as a thief wolfen, the D-rank special individual bears its rows of needle-like teeth. The creature releases a haunting howl that vibrates through the night air. Ren recognizes the danger and immediately retreats through the thick forest brush. His breath comes in ragged gasps as he focuses entirely on escape. A sudden burst of light signals the monster's arrival as it closes the gap instantly. The colossal beast pounces with lethal intent, barely missing the boy as he dives. Landing roughly, Ren manages to roll toward the safety of a large tree. The wood splinters violently when the wolf's head impacts the trunk with crushing force. He crouches low to the earth, realizing the monster's speed is completely overwhelming. The multi-tailed beast stalks him through the clearing, its predatory gaze never wavering. Fallen leaves drift through the misty air as the tension reaches a breaking point. Ren stares ahead in shock as the atmosphere around the monster begins to shift. A concentrated blast of wind magic erupts, disintegrating a tree into countless wooden shards. The violent shockwave knocks the boy off his feet and sends him tumbling. The predator continues to gather air, revealing its ability to manipulate the wind. Ren stands his ground while observing the predator's movements from a distance. He struggles to maintain his composure, while his heart hammers against his ribs. His fingers tighten around the handle of his blade in a desperate grip. Dark thoughts cloud his mind as he weighs the risk of a counterattack. His eyes snap toward a sudden flicker of movement that threatens his life. The multi-tailed wolf stands firm in the mist, its presence dominating the dark forest. Ren notices a significant wound staining the fur on the predator's front leg. His eyes widen in shock as the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. A gust of wind shakes the leaves from the branches as silence hangs heavy over the clearing. He recalls the image of his father delivering a heavy blow to the beast during their previous encounter. The revelation hits him that Roy was the one who managed to wound this monster. He envisions his father covered in blood and leaning against the stone walls of their home. This injury is the only reason the village has remained safe from the creature's hunger. Ren lowers his head while processing the weight of his father's silent sacrifice. He remembers Roy's unconscious form, resting after his duty as a knight was fulfilled. The thief wolfen stalks through the tall grass, its movements slightly hampered by the old wound. Grit and determination return to the boy's face as he refuses to let his father's effort go to waste. The beast lets out a low, guttural snarl that echoes through the trees. Its jaw unhinges as it begins to channel magical energy once more. A massive hurricane of wind erupts from the monster's maw, shredding everything in its path. Ren braces himself on the ground, identifying the attack as high-level wind magic. He quickly summons a dense wall of natural vines to act as a temporary shield. The razor-sharp wind slices through the foliage, sending green leaves scattering in every direction. Taking advantage of the cover, Ren leaps through the crumbling plant matter to reposition himself. He charges forward with his blade held high as the massive wolf lunges to finish the fight. The thief wolfen lets out a ferocious roar while struggling against the tightening vines. Despite the leafy restraints, the predator thrashes wildly to reclaim its freedom. Seizing the opening, Ren leaps high into the air with his magic blade poised. He brings the wooden sword down with all his might, only for it to shatter. Splinters of enchanted wood fly through the air as the blade fails to pierce. Ren stares in disbelief as his primary offensive tool crumbles in his hands. The force of the failed impact sends him tumbling backward away from his target. The beast remains momentarily entangled, its eyes burning with primal rage. Looking down at the useless hilt, Ren realizes his magic sword has broken. He desperately attempts to resummon the blade, while the wolf prepares a counterattack. A surge of mana flows through his arm as a fresh length of wood grows. The strain of the rapid weapon regeneration causes him to grimace in pain. He feels his energy levels plummet as the cost of restoring the sword hits. Tightening his grip on the new weapon, he readies himself for the next exchange. The monster lunges forward with terrifying speed, snapping its jaws near his face. Sweat pours down his face as he focuses every ounce of his remaining strength. A heavy paw slams against the earth, kicking up dirt and forest debris. The wolf delivers a crushing blow that bypasses Ren's guard and sends him reeling. He is thrown through the air and crashes violently into a thick tree trunk. The young boy hits the ground hard, gasping for breath as he tries to recover. The thief wolfen snarls with primal fury while narrowing its eyes at the cornered boy. Ren slumps against a massive tree trunk, panting heavily as his strength begins to fail. Thick vines and gnarled branches sprout rapidly to form a defensive dome around him. The predator stalks toward the wooden barricade, with its sharp fangs bared in a growl. Lunging forward, the beast bites into the protective wood to tear the barrier apart. Ren watches his trembling hand, while his vision blurs from the intense magical exertion. Sweat beads on his forehead as he struggles to maintain his fading consciousness. Suddenly, he recalls the medicinal herb in his possession and pulls it out quickly. A sharp realization strikes him as he gazes at the glowing, five-pointed leaf. He remembers his father lying sick in bed, driving his will to survive this encounter. Gripping the herb, Ren steels his resolve despite the overwhelming presence of the wolf. His eyes burn with renewed determination as he considers his next desperate gamble. The monster continues its relentless assault, splintering the wooden wall with every strike. Jagged teeth snap inches away from Ren's face as the barrier finally gives way. In a moment of pure focus, he searches his mind for one last hidden weapon. The wolf towers over him with its mouth open wide for a final lethal bite. Light glints off the ornate gem embedded in his leather bracer as mana surges. Wood shards fly everywhere while the predator lunges through the wreckage of the dome. A massive shockwave of magic and splinters erupts as Ren unleashes a hidden power. The force of the blast sends the young boy skidding backward across the dirt. Ren plants his boot firmly in the dirt to regain his balance. Resting against a tree, he catches his breath while sweat pours down his face. A massive stone pillar erupts from the forest floor as the landscape shifts. The ferocious wolf lets out a deafening roar while glaring at its prey. Shouting in defiance, the young boy prepares himself for another desperate maneuver. Thick ivy suddenly lashes out to bind the predator's snarling jaws shut. Ren sprints through the underbrush as his remaining mana levels reach a critical low. The beast thrashes wildly against the tightening green restraints to break free. He spots several fallen monster carcasses scattered across the forest floor ahead. Moving toward the remains, Ren realizes he needs more power to survive. A mental interface appears, showing the requirements to unlock a more powerful sword. Facing the wolf once more, he prepares his wooden blade for a final gambit. He swings his arm with every ounce of strength left in his body. The impact of his strike sends the giant predator reeling backward. Magical vines wrap tightly around his sword to enhance its striking power. A massive network of foliage expands to fully entangle the struggling monster. More vines constrict around the wolf's neck as it tries to snap them. Ren reaches out toward the monster remains to absorb their lingering energy. Thoughts of his mother and father provide him with the strength to keep fighting. Bright mana channels through his arm as he executes his ultimate technique. Ren's eyes widen with intense focus and determination. As a status window displays the requirements for the Iron Magic Sword, he reaches out while a glowing orb of energy begins to manifest. Meanwhile, the wolf's massive jaws snap open in a terrifying display. Ren quickly positions himself directly beneath the towering beast's open maw, thrusting his sword upward with a fierce cry of desperation. The force of the impact causes a sharp sound to ring out, as a sudden blur of motion streaks across the forest. Blood splatters through the air when the strike connects with the target. A brilliant beam of light pierces through the wolf's head. Then, a vertical pillar of energy extends high into the dark sky, and a sharp blade tip emerges from the top of the monster's skull. The defeated predator collapses heavily to the ground beside the boy, while dark blood continues to gush out from the fatal wound. As droplets of the dark liquid rain down onto the surrounding area, Ren stares in awe at the newly transformed iron magic sword. He slumps against the monster's fur while gasping for air. A notification confirms the successful absorption of the monster's mana. Sweat drips from his chin as he smiles through the exhaustion. Finally, he lies back against the beast, realizing his body can no longer move. Ren clutches his satchel tightly while drifting into unconsciousness as the rhythmic thumping of approaching horse hooves nears. He remains slumped against the thick white pelt of the beast. His weary eyes struggle to stay open in the dim light. A group of armored knights emerges from the trees at last. They dismount to inspect the giant carcass of the slain predator. The riders gallop across the rugged landscape under the evening sky. Silence settles over the isolated farmhouse as the day ends. An armored fist beats urgently against the sturdy front door. Ren's mother answers to find several soldiers standing on her porch. Her face pales as she senses something has gone wrong. A knight steps forward, cradling the limp and blood-covered boy. The soldiers explain the circumstances of their discovery to the mother. They show her the small bag Ren held during the ordeal. She pulls a delicate medicinal flower from the leather pouch. Seeing her son's battered state causes her eyes to fill. She moves toward him with an expression of immense relief. The mother pulls Ren into a deep and protective hug, sobbing quietly as she clutches her child to her heart. The family home stands quiet beneath the growing shadows of night. The morning sun casts long shadows over the rugged mountain range. While an official breaks into a sweat upon receiving a shocking report, news of a lone boy's victory reaches the sprawling capital city. A soldier kneels in the courtyard to confirm Ren's incredible feat. A young lady of the court strolls through the silent halls. She stops in disbelief after hearing the name of the slain beast. An intrigued smile spreads across her face as she ponders the rumors. Peace returns to the countryside as several weeks quietly pass by. A jagged stone spire rises high above the surrounding forest floor. The wind sweeps across the barren summit of the lonely mountain. Ren reviews his status screen to see his newly unlocked abilities. A specialized magic dagger materializes over his finger with a flash. Resting among the leaves, he contemplates the growth of his power. He retrieves a golden pocket watch while packing his heavy satchel. With practiced movements, he descends the side of a massive cliff. A patrolling knight calls out to him from the path below. The guard scolds the boy for entering the woods without backup. Ren looks back with a nervous grin while offering an apology. The two travelers make their way through the dense forest together as the boy clutches his bag of treasures on the horse's back. Ren offers the spoils of his journey to support the village's financial needs. The knight explains that taxes are waived this year due to the monster's value. Wide-eyed with shock, the boy realizes his victory brings long-term prosperity. News of the newfound wealth spreads quickly to the peaceful cottage on the hill. His father greets him with a proud smile while celebrating his incredible achievement. Ren humbly denies the praise and attributes his success to his father's training. He requests a beautiful glowing stone as his personal share of the rewards. Identifying the rare blue pearl, he reflects on its unique mystical properties. The boy further asks for a decorative silver bracelet to wear more openly. Roy watches his son with pride and a hint of concern for his safety, admitting that such dangerous adventures make a parent worry despite the success. A gentle hand reaches out to ruffle the boy's hair in a quiet gesture. Roy firmly places a hand on his shoulder while commending his bravery. A subtle smile touches the boy's lips as he accepts the official praise. Serenity returns to the nameless village as the locals resume their daily routines. A small bird watches from a high branch as the morning sun rises. Clean laundry flutters in the breeze while a woman works in the field. Carrying a heavy wooden tub, Ren walks past the sheep on the farm. A mysterious young girl sits quietly on a stone wall beneath a tree. She gazes out over the valley, while a horse waits patiently beside her. The mysterious girl gazes downward with a quiet expression as petals drift through the air. Ren stops in his tracks while wondering if this stranger belongs to the local village. Shifting her gaze, the newcomer observes the young boy with a sharp and focused eye. A sudden radiant smile spreads across her face while she acknowledges his presence. She asks for confirmation of his identity by calling out the name Ren Ashton. Startled by the direct question, the boy confirms his name while clutching his wooden tub. A sense of destiny hangs in the air as the girl's mysterious smile widens. Taking a purposeful step forward, she moves through the tall grass toward the center. Standing beneath the grand tree, the two children face one another in a fateful meeting. Without warning, the girl draws two swords and crosses them in a show of skill. She tosses a blade into the dirt where it stands upright in the morning sun. Ren stares at the weapon in shock while trying to process the sudden turn of events. The girl turns away while casually asking if his previous injuries have finally healed. Setting down his heavy task, the boy wonders how this stranger knows his secrets. Reaching out with a steady hand, he grips the hilt of the sword planted before him. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she declares that their session is now beginning. Ren remains baffled as he lifts the weight of the metal blade for the first time. Moving with incredible speed, the girl launches a fierce and direct frontal assault. A powerful thrust cuts through the air as she drives toward her confused opponent. Ren reacts just in time to block the rapid twin blade strike with his own sword. The girl's eyes sharpen as she watches Ren's reactions during their high-speed exchange. Weaving through several rapid strikes, Ren struggles to keep pace with her flurry of movements. A joyful expression crosses her face as she praises his ability to parry her blades. The relentless girl drives her weapon forward, while Ren focuses entirely on his defensive stance. She casually mentions that the blades are dull while forcing him into a corner. Questioning the girl's true intentions, Ren wonders if this is actually meant to be a duel. The mysterious stranger continues her aggressive assault with a series of powerful and precise thrusts. Deciding to minimize the risk of injury, Ren searches for an opening to end the fight. Planting his foot firmly in the soil, he readies himself for a decisive counterattack. Noticing the sudden shift in his rhythm, the girl gasps in shock at his speed. A sharp cry echoes through the air as a sudden thud signals a change. Ren maintains a firm grip on his sword while closing the distance between them. Lunging forward, Ren pins the girl to the grass while calmly declaring his victory. Stunned by the sudden reversal of fortune, the girl stares up at him in silence. Her cheeks flush with embarrassment while she stammers out a flustered response. Ren looks down at his opponent with a mix of confusion and awkwardness. Jumping back with a hasty apology, he reacts to her sudden cry about his proximity. Quickly regaining her footing, the girl demands that they restart the duel immediately. She expresses her stubborn refusal to accept defeat as her intensity flares up once more. Ren can only stare in disbelief at the persistent girl's refusal to end their session. A horse gallops across the terrain at a frantic pace. While a group of knights on horseback arrives to interrupt the tense duel, Ren watches the approaching cavalry with a look of stunned disbelief. The senior knight, Vice, gasps for air after finally catching up to the girl. The mysterious girl looks down while a faint blush colors her cheeks. She lets out a long sigh and offers to explain her sudden appearance. Holding her dress, she performs a formal curtsy that confirms her high status. A bead of sweat rolls down Ren's face as he observes her refined movements. She holds up a sealed envelope and states she represents her father's interests. The girl explains that her father was impressed by the Ashton family's recent victory. Ren's eye widens in pure shock as he begins to realize the truth. She introduces herself as Lithia Clausel, also known as the White Saint. The boy's eye dilates with fear as he recalls her tragic fate. A dark premonition shows a future where a boy carries her limp body. The haunting image of her unconscious face lingers in his mind. Weiss questions her reckless behavior, while she dismisses the guard's slow pace. Ren realizes with horror that he is destined to kill this young girl. He continues to stare at her while wondering about her presence in the village. The sun shines over a charming house as birds soar through the sky. Inside the house, Ren's father looks up in shock at his noble guests. Ren's mother hospitably serves mugs of tea to the weary knights standing in the room. Lithia and Ren sit quietly across from one another to share a formal tea service. The boy struggles to maintain his composure, while sweat beads on his furrowed brow. Lithia takes a graceful sip of her tea as she exudes an air of untouchable nobility. Ren recalls her immense strength and her reputation as a formidable warrior in the game. He remembers the stories of her legendary beauty that captivated every player of the story. The memory of her being an unreachable heroine who never opened her heart lingers. Lithia breaks his concentration by asking if he would ever consider moving to her town. A jolt of surprise strikes the boy as he reacts to her unexpected and direct invitation. She sets her cup down while explaining her desire to see his true strength in person. A soft smile plays on her lips while she compliments his bravery during their brief skirmish. Ren remains bewildered by her sudden praise and the intensity of her focused gaze. He lowers his head in defeat, feeling completely overwhelmed by her dominant presence and charisma. A mental map illustrates the long and arduous journey she took just to find him. Looking out toward the distant mountains, Ren considers the seclusion of their remote border village. Lithia remains poised in her chair as she reflects on her decision to travel so far. She notices his hesitation and asks if something is troubling him during their conversation. Ren remembers the brutal wolf attack and humbly credits his father for the victory. Gesturing frantically, he tries to downplay his own role and dismiss any claims of heroism. The girl observes his modesty and concludes that he is unlike any other noble boy. Lithia speaks with passion as she urges him to come to her town. Ren ponders her request, while realizing just how much she loves the sword. The boy remains resolute as he explains that he never intends to leave. Lithia blinks in surprise at his blunt refusal to move to the city. She smiles softly, while noting that he seems to be keeping distance. The noble girl asks if he hates her, making Ren jump back. Ren clarifies that his father would be the only one left to fight. Lithia listens quietly as she places her cup back onto the saucer. She looks on with a steady gaze while processing his deep commitment. Ren emphasizes that he enjoys his life and has no interest in cities. Lithia rests her face in her hand and considers his unique perspective. Birds fly over the distant mountain peaks as the sun sets outside. The group sits down for a hearty meal in the cabin's warmth. A full moon rises high over the cottage as the night turns still. Ren heads to the stables and gently strokes a white horse's muzzle. He takes a deep breath and finds peace among the animals. A training sword suddenly plunges into the dirt with a sharp thud. The boy spins around as he notices a figure in the shadows. He breaks into a nervous sweat while questioning this late-night exercise. Lithia draws her weapon and declares that it is time to duel. Ren looks down in frustration as he realizes he cannot avoid this confrontation. His hand hovers over the training sword, lying abandoned on the grass. The boy hesitates while considering the consequences of engaging in this midnight duel. Lithia watches him intently and warns that she will stay longer if he refuses. Ren finally grips the hilt and forces a nervous laugh to mask his unease. The noble girl stares at him with a silent and unreadable expression. She leans in close to ask why he continues to reject her offers. Ren jumps slightly when she suggests he is hiding a deeper secret reason. Lithia points her blade and demands the truth if she emerges victorious today. The boy asks what his reward will be should he win the fight. A playful smile crosses her face as she promises to visit him again. Ren realizes that both outcomes lead to more trouble for his peaceful life. Lithia shouts a battle cry and launches herself forward with incredible speed. The young protagonist braces his feet and prepares for the first heavy impact. Their wooden swords clash violently as Ren successfully parries her initial downward strike. She follows up with a whirlwind of attacks that the boy narrowly avoids. Shock fills the girl's eyes as she wonders how he keeps defending himself. Ren maintains his composure while deflecting another powerful blow from her weapon. They dance across the training ground in a high-speed exchange of sharp steel. The duelists lock blades as Lithia declares her absolute refusal to accept defeat. Their blades grind against each other, with sparks flying from the intense friction. Lithia swings a heavy horizontal blow that Ren barely evades by crouching low. The boy remains focused as he pivots his body mid-motion to maintain balance. He launches into a dynamic spinning kick while Lithia follows up with another strike. She lands gracefully in a low stance before preparing her next big move. A radiant aura begins to envelop the girl as she activates her hidden power. A blinding pillar of light erupts across the field as her energy surges upward. She tears across the grass with enhanced speed that leaves a luminous trail. Lithia stares ahead with fierce determination while closing the distance in an instant. She unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes that pushes Ren back several steps. Ren struggles to keep up as he notices her strength has suddenly doubled. Their wooden weapons lock once more in a shower of splintering energy effects. The boy recalls the legends of the Holy Maiden's legendary healing and buffs. A powerful parry sends Ren sliding backward while he stabilizes his footing. Lithia somersaults through the air to deliver a crushing blow from above him. Ren realizes the true terror of a skill that combines magic and martial arts. He tightens his grip on the training sword while bracing for her next assault. She thrusts her weapon forward with such force that a shockwave splits the air. The two duelists momentarily create distance to catch their breath and reassess. Lithia admits she cannot use her full strength without permission from her superiors. Ren ponders his next move while sweat drips down his face. His gaze suddenly hardens as he decides to use his full strength. A flurry of movement fills the air as the pace quickens. Lithia performs an acrobatic maneuver to gain a better angle. She lands with precision while Ren adjusts his stance to compensate. He delivers a heavy downward strike that cuts through the wind. The young warrior holds his blade steady and focuses his intent. He pushes forward with a burst of energy that leaves shadows behind. The two combatants exchange blows in a rapid and fluid sequence. Memories of a dangerous beast's fangs cross his mind during the battle. Lithia looks on in shock as Ren's movements become even more precise. He swiftly evades a high strike by sliding underneath her guard. Their limbs tangle briefly in a struggle for physical dominance. Ren ends the sequence by pointing his sword directly at her neck. The girl stands paralyzed with a look of pure astonishment. She immediately retaliates with a sweeping blow to regain her ground. Her eyes narrow with focus as she prepares for the next clash. A sharp horizontal line marks the path of her latest offensive. The duel reaches a fever pitch as both sides refuse to yield. Ren drops into a defensive posture to safely catch her incoming blade. Ren executes a rapid spinning move that completely catches Lithia off guard. The moon glows brightly above the training field as the decisive moment arrives. Lithia finds herself pinned to the ground with a look of pure shock on her face. Ren stands victoriously over her with his sword held firmly at her neck. He stares down at her with a calm but intense gaze that demands acknowledgement. The girl remains paralyzed on the grass while the sharp blade rests near her skin. Her eye widens in total disbelief at how quickly the tables have turned. A bead of sweat rolls down Ren's cheek as he holds his winning position. Lithia eventually pushes herself back and creates distance between them once more. She hangs her head in silence while clutching her practice sword with trembling hands. The young boy watches her and waits for her to say something about the duel. She looks up with tears of frustration forming in her eyes while biting her lip. Ren is surprised by the raw emotion showing on his opponent's face. The two combatants stand apart in the moonlight as the silence grows heavy. The sudden sound of slow clapping breaks the stillness of the night. Lithia turns toward the source of the noise with a bewildered expression. Ren follows her gaze to see who is approaching them from the shadows. An older man appears and stands between the two children to end the session. He looks at Ren with a small smile and commends him for his performance. The veteran warrior addresses both students as the training session finally comes to a close. The veteran warrior instructs Lithia to return to the mansion and continue her training with renewed focus. She stares at the grass with a heavy heart while contemplating her recent defeat. Turning toward her opponent, the young girl offers a polite bow to show her respect. She speaks softly while struggling to find the right words for her overwhelming feelings. Ren watches her closely and notices the flicker of genuine emotion in her eyes. Lithia admits that despite the outcome, the duel provided her with a valuable learning experience. The boy stammers a response as he tries to maintain his composure during the exchange. A sense of frustration lingers while the noble girl remains lost in her own thoughts. She eventually turns her back and begins walking toward the estate without looking back. Her silent footsteps fade into the night as Ren and the older man watch her departure. The seasoned fighter apologizes to Ren for the noble girl's sudden and emotional outburst. Ren listens intently while trying to process the strange intensity of his former opponent. The man explains that Lithia has been feeling immense pressure due to her high status. He recalls how she often practiced alone after easily defeating all of her previous sparring partners. Ren looks surprised to learn that no one else her age could match her skill. The conversation shifts as the man reveals their departure is scheduled for the next morning. He mentions that Lithia has personally taken on several difficult responsibilities to help the village. Ren's eyes widen as he realizes the true weight of the burden she carries. He imagines the young lady standing before the villagers to address their concerns with authority. The boy reflects on his new understanding of the girl as he stands under the moonlight. Ren recalls Lithia's status as a top student at the academy within the legendary game's narrative. He feels a sense of unease while considering the complexity hidden beneath her outward appearance. The image of her looking genuinely saddened during their duel continues to linger in his mind. His focused gaze reflects his deep contemplation of the girl's true character and destiny. A dark vision of a future where he carries her limp body through a grand hall flashes. He considers how their early connection was never fully detailed in the original story's lore. The full moon shines brightly over the darkened forest as the long night continues. Soft morning light eventually begins to glow behind the jagged peaks of the mountain range. A rooster lets out a loud cry to announce the arrival of the new day. The quiet cottage sits nestled under a large tree as the sun rises higher. Inside her room, Lithia lies restlessly in bed, with an arm draped over her forehead. She stares upward and sighs with exhaustion after failing to get any sleep at all. She decides to sit at her desk and carefully compose a letter using a dip pen. The seasoned warrior inspects the finished parchment with a look of growing confusion and surprise. She explains her intention to leave a proper message for the Ashton family before leaving. The young noblewoman asks if the words adequately convey her feelings regarding Ren's future visit. A bead of sweat rolls down the man's face as he continues to read the letter. He struggles to find the right words to address the awkward situation unfolding before him. The warrior finally tells her that the letter reads exactly like a passionate romantic confession. Lithia's eyes widen in shock as she realizes the unintended meaning of her own writing. The warrior bluntly asks if the parchment is intended to be a love letter. He points to a specific line that describes a heart racing with excitement. A large speech bubble highlights the problematic phrase about an intense internal feeling. Lithia frantically waves her hands while explaining she only meant his swordsmanship was impressive. The veteran soldier notes that her choice of words resembles a woman deeply in love. A flash of pure mortification crosses the young girl's face as she freezes in place. The man continues to scan the rest of the message with a skeptical gaze. Lithia clutches her chest as more flowery descriptions of Ren's bravery are read aloud. She shouts that her words were meant to express a desire for another duel. The warrior sighs and compares her behavior to a commoner smitten with a local hero. Beads of sweat form on her brow as she rereads the embarrassing sentences herself. She covers her blushing face with the paper and admits the warrior is right. The noblewoman collapses into a small heap on the floor while clutching her head. She decides to hide the letter deep inside her travel bag immediately. She resolves to destroy the evidence of her mistake after they depart the village. The group prepares their horses outside the Ashton home as the departure begins. Ren and his parents stand together and wave goodbye to their guests. Lithia maintains a silent and stoic profile as she begins the ride home. The small party of knights travels steadily through the dense woods and tall grass. She leans her forehead against her horse's neck while still dwelling on her mistake. A sudden gust of wind pulls the forgotten letter from the open bag. Lithia continues her journey on horseback while the paper floats away unnoticed. A massive rock spire stands as a landmark over the surrounding greenery. Ren strolls through the forest while pondering his growing magical capabilities. A status window appears to describe the properties of a thieving skill. He looks at the metallic claw on his finger and decides to practice. An unsuspecting bird flies through the air within his immediate reach. The boy extends his hand to activate the magic on the target. A flash of light erupts as his finger makes contact with the bird. The creature shrieks and flies away after being touched by the spell. A soft glow remains around his hand as the skill successfully executes. Ren finds a single bird feather, now resting in his open palm. He realizes that the ability allows him to steal items from living beings. Nearby in the trees, two birds chirp loudly while perched on a branch. They fight over the mysterious piece of parchment caught in the twigs. Noticing the commotion, Ren points his finger toward the squabbling pair. A brilliant spark of magic appears between the two startled birds. The letter instantly vanishes from the branch and reappears in his hand. He looks at the retrieved paper and wonders why a letter is here. He unfolds the page to examine the elegant handwriting scrawled upon it. Ren stares at the letter in shock, wondering if it could actually be a love letter. Meanwhile, Lithia rides alongside a knight with a troubled expression on her face. The boy remains in the tall grass as he questions the origin of the message. He notices the high quality of the parchment and puzzles over its author. Upon reading the contents, he discovers the text mentions the name Clausel. He continues to scan the lines and finds a reference to his own sword skills. A sudden realization strikes him as he considers if Lithia wrote this for him. The thundering sound of galloping hooves suddenly echoes through the forest trail. Startled by the noise, Ren spins around to see what is approaching. A large cloud of dust rises from the path as horses charge toward his position. Several knights clad in full plate armor emerge from the trees on horseback. Ren quickly hides the letter inside his coat to keep it safe from prying eyes. A banner fluttering in the wind displays a regal crest of a winged lion. He recognizes that the emblems do not belong to the local Clausel knights. The riders pull back on their reins, causing their mounts to skid to a stop. One of the armored soldiers looms over the young boy from atop a horse. The powerful white steed rears its legs high into the air as the knight watches. The heavy hooves crash back onto the dirt with a loud and intimidating thud. From behind the metal visor, the lead knight demands to know if Ren is an Ashton. Ren stares up at the mysterious group and calmly asks for their identities. The lead knight states they come on behalf of Viscount Givens and have a letter for the Ashton house. Ren's eyes widen in surprise at the mention of the high-ranking noble's name. The knight looks down with a stern gaze, insisting that they be guided to Ren's home at once. A mental map reveals the location of the Givens territory far to the northeast. Ren concludes he cannot refuse a request from a superior rank and agrees to lead the way. He begins the trek back, questioning why so many people are suddenly seeking out his family. The group arrives at the humble Ashton estate as the sun shines down on the property. After dismounting his horse, the lead knight removes his helmet to reveal his youthful face. The soldier enters the house and presents an official scroll to Ren's bedridden father. Ren waits outside the door with the local guards, his expression filled with uncertainty. The knight soon emerges from the building and addresses Ren by his full name. Ren looks up in confusion, asking if the messenger truly has a message for him specifically. The blonde knight reveals that the Viscount highly values Ren's skills and wants him to join his house. The young boy is visibly shaken by the sudden recruitment offer from such a powerful noble. Behind him, one of the Clausel soldiers narrows his eyes at the bold declaration. The guard steps forward to state that Ren has already received an invitation from their own master. The Givens knight smirks, counter-arguing that an invitation is not the same as a formal agreement. A verbal confrontation ensues as the local guard demands that proper protocol be respected. The soldier in the chainmail hood refuses to back down, despite the difference in their status. Ren remains silent between the two clashing warriors as they fight over his future service. The Givens knights stand ready by their horses as the tense encounter concludes. A focused look crosses the face of the young knight as he observes the boy. The messenger smirks and decides to withdraw for the moment to avoid further conflict. Ren remains on guard while watching the group prepare to leave his family property. While mounting his horse, the lead knight looks back and promises to return soon. The troop of riders gallops away across the vast field toward the distant trees. Back inside the house, Ren's father sits up and carefully reads the official scroll. The entire household gathers in the small room to discuss the implications of the letter. Ren listens intently as the guard explains the reality of the Empire's factional struggles. A mental map illustrates the three main political groups, currently competing for imperial dominance. The Royalist faction is described as traditionalists, who follow the lineage of the Lion King. The heroic faction is introduced as a group centered around legendary figures and their descendants. The group identifies Viscount Givens as a prominent member of the ambitious heroic faction. Dark imagery depicts those who wish to reform the empire and suppress royal authority. The Clausel house is categorized under the neutral faction, which values peace and balance. Ren holds the document and questions the legality of transferring territory between noble houses. His father expresses confusion over why a powerful noble would want such a humble village. The Clausel Guard warns that there must be a secret motive behind the sudden interest. They discuss the influence of the Holy Saintess and how she affects the political landscape. Ren looks down with a worried face, dreading being pulled into a dangerous power struggle. The village remains quiet as the weight of the Ashton family's loyalty to House Clausel hangs heavy. A metaphorical spiderweb suggests that they are already being pulled into a dangerous trap. Ren studies the document with a trembling hand as he tries to decipher the Viscount's true objective. Sudden realization strikes the boy as he connects the dots between the recent events and the letter. Turning toward his father, Ren speaks up with a voice full of growing concern. The text on the scroll explicitly demands the village's incorporation, due to a supposed lack of defense. Dark memories of the bloody battle against the thief Wolfen resurface as Ren considers the Empire's excuses. His father argues that such an incident should be treated as an anomaly rather than a failure. Ren lingers on the word anomaly while processing the potential political fallout for their lord. His sharp gaze narrows as he realizes the sheer scale of the conspiracy unfolding around them. The seasoned knight explains that lords face severe punishment if they fail to protect their people from monsters. A guard concurs that the primary duty of any noble is the safety of their designated territory. Questioning the consequences, Ren asks if the Clausel house could be held responsible for the neighboring villages. The entire room falls silent as the boy suggests that Viscount Givens is intentionally manufacturing a crisis. Shock washes over Ren's father as he considers the possibility of a calculated betrayal. He asks for clarification on whether Ren believes they are being framed using the recent chaos. Ren continues his explanation by outlining a hypothetical scenario where their house is systematically weakened. The various faction crests symbolize the complex power struggle that seeks to absorb neutral nobles. Stunned silence fills the room, while the gravity of the situation finally sinks in for everyone present. Ren clutches his head in frustration as he wonders if this entire nightmare was planned from the beginning. The knight listens in shock as Ren describes a plot spanning several months. A dark premonition of a catastrophic failure hangs heavily in the air. Ren wipes sweat from his brow while grappling with the scale of the conspiracy. Viscount Givens stands triumphantly amidst the banners of the Empire and the wolf's carcass. Disbelief takes root in the father's eyes as he hears his son's accusations. Ren suggests that the Viscount may have orchestrated the monster attacks himself. The boy admits he has no proof, but remains convinced of his logical conclusion. The mental ripples of the investigation expand as all the pieces fall into place. His parents exchange worried glances, while the weight of the situation sinks in. The knight stares at the young boy in absolute amazement at his deductive reasoning, complimenting Ren's sharp mind. The warrior turns to the stunned father. Ren maintains that his theory is speculation, but urges everyone to remain cautious. His father resolves to stop resting and prepare for the coming conflict. The bearded knight pledges to inform their lord and tighten security immediately. Ren looks off to the side with a deeply troubled and serious expression. Armed guards ride swiftly through the undergrowth to reach the next outpost. An expansive view of the rugged terrain highlights the isolation of their home. The moon shines down on a jagged peak as the day comes to an end. Following the intense meeting, Ren keeps his body busy by splitting firewood. The child spends his nights studying diligently to find more answers in his books. Autumn passes as the seasons begin to change and leaves fall to the ground. Winter eventually arrives with a light dusting of snow as families enjoy the cold outdoors. A fierce wild boar suddenly charges through the woods with its tusks bared and eyes glowing. Ren stands triumphantly with his knights after a successful day of hunting monsters in the snow. One of the knights offers high praise for Ren's skill, while the boy responds with modest humility. A knight becomes overly emotional about Ren's potential as his companion tries to calm him down. The quiet of the winter evening settles over the snow-covered estate. Ren returns home carrying a small pouch and greets the occupants of the house. A pair of hands carefully hold an open book as a voice welcomes him back. A young girl sits at the kitchen table reading, while waiting for Ren to arrive. Ren's eyes widen in absolute shock at the sight of the unexpected guest in his home. The boy jumps back in surprise and shouts while the girl remains focused on her book. She winces and covers her ear as she complains about his loud and sudden outburst. Ren points toward her in confusion and demands to know why she is inside his house. Looking over her shoulder with a sharp expression, the girl prepares to answer his question. She boldly explains that she came to him because he refused to visit her at her home. Ren remains completely stunned into silence by her direct and unexpected reason for visiting. She reveals a magical device that sprays a steady stream of water like a modern shower. The boy watches in awe as she demonstrates the incredible convenience of the magical tool. Holding a crystal orb, she explains how it generates water to eliminate the need for fetching it from a well. Ren asks about the cost of the device, but she dismisses his worries by mentioning she repaired it herself. Her tone shifts as she reveals the political pressure her father faces from high-ranking noble factions. She admits that even the title of saint has little influence over the complex hierarchy of the nobility, mentioning that unless one achieves the status of the legendary 7 heroes, their social standing remains limited. Ren realizes the immense burden she carries, despite her seemingly bright and cheerful outward personality. She suddenly requests that Ren guide her to his father's bedroom to begin the treatment. Light snow continues to fall quietly over the roof of the manor during the cold winter night. Standing over the bed, she gently places her hands near Ren's father to initiate her healing powers. A soft glow emanates from her palms as the holy energy begins to mend his physical condition. Ren watches the process with a mix of awe and realization regarding the true nature of her magic. The father wakes up feeling refreshed and expresses his sincere gratitude for her consistent and selfless help. The sound of wooden blades clashing rings out across the snowy training grounds the following day. Ren asks if she was responsible for his previous recovery, as she nonchalantly confirms the truth. He stares back in stunned silence, feeling a sense of guilt for not knowing about her secret assistance. The morning light reflects off the thick layer of snow covering the estate as training continues. Both youths engage in a fast-paced sparring match, testing their reflexes and strength against each other. Ren notices how her movements have become significantly more refined and powerful since their last encounter. Her boots lose traction on the slippery ice as she attempts a sudden and aggressive maneuver. She gasps in alarm while her balance completely fails, and she starts to tumble backward. Ren lunges forward and catches her securely in his arms to prevent a hard fall into the snow. Ren looks down at her with concern, asking if she is all right after the stumble. They quickly regain their composure and stand apart on the snowy training field. She wipes sweat from her brow while gasping for air, amazed by his stamina. Her eyes shine with determination as she tries to catch her breath once more. A bright smile crosses her face as she admits that sparring with him is incredibly enjoyable. Her expression softens into a gentle and sincere look while she observes Ren. She playfully declares that they will resume their match tomorrow morning and vows to win. Ren remains silent, watching her with a complicated and thoughtful gaze. They spend time together indoors, sharing a book as she explains its contents. Several days pass with them repeatedly engaging in intense sword practice outside the manor. Eventually, she mounts her horse and waves a final goodbye to the household. Ren stands beside his mother, watching her group disappear into the snowy mountain distance. He wonders quietly to himself if she truly intends to visit them again soon. He contemplates the potential risks of forming such a close bond with a noble. A troubled expression flickers across his face as he stares at the empty path. The harsh winter slowly fades away, leaving the forest trees laden with melting snow. Green shoots begin to push through the earth as the season finally transitions to spring. The vast valley awakens under the warm sun, signaling the arrival of a new year. Ren walks through the lush fields with his father, who has regained his full health. A group of mounted soldiers arrives at the manor gate as the spring air hums. Ren and his father exchange bewildered looks as they witness the arrival of the knights. Several armored soldiers stand before the manor gates while their leader holds a formal scroll. The lead knight shoots a confident glance toward his colleague, who seems slightly uneasy, greeting them with a cheerful voice. The knight presents himself and the official message he carries. He explains that his master still holds Ren's family in high regard. Turning his attention toward the young boy, the knight mentions having a special proposal for him. Ren feels a sudden wave of apprehension wash over him as the man continues speaking. The knight leans forward slightly and begins to elaborate on the nature of his visit. He loudly proclaims an offer for Ren to join the prestigious Imperial Military Academy. The surrounding soldiers stand in stunned silence upon hearing the mention of such an elite school. His father gasps in disbelief, unable to process the magnitude of the knight's words. A bead of sweat forms on Ren's face as he absorbs the weight of the proposal. His father questions how Ren could possibly qualify for a special class at such an academy. The knight dismisses the concerns with a smirk, claiming that normal rules do not apply. He describes the academy as a place where only the most talented children of nobles gather. Boasting about his connections, the knight explains how a recommendation from the Viscount can open doors. He asks Ren if he truly wishes to see his skills flourish in the grand capital. Ren looks up and gives a short but incredibly firm rejection to the knight's offer. The knight maintains a polite smile at first, not fully processing the denial he just heard. His eyes widen in pure shock as the reality of Ren's refusal finally sinks in. Ren stands his ground and calmly states that he has no intention of leaving his home village. The knight reacts with overwhelming shock, questioning why anyone would turn down the chance for nobility. Focusing inward, Ren recalls that the Imperial Military Academy is the central setting for a dangerous legend. He realizes that joining the elite class would place him directly among the game's destined protagonists. Imagining a dark and turbulent future he wishes to avoid, Ren remains resolute in his decision. Politely but firmly, he explains to the messenger that his current life brings him complete satisfaction. Stunned by the boy's lack of ambition for status, the knight can only stare in disbelief. Shifting his focus, the knight desperately asks the father if he truly rejects nobility for his son. The father looks down thoughtfully, admitting that while a broader world is tempting, certain things matter more. Highlighting the importance of choice, the narrative emphasizes that Ren's own will is the priority. Ren's father speaks with newfound pride, declaring he will send his own formal reply to the Viscount. The knight is visibly rattled by the family's unified front against such a prestigious invitation. Looking downward in silence, the messenger seems to struggle with the unexpected outcome of his visit. Meeting their gaze with a sharp and serious expression, the knight finally accepts their firm rejection. He turns his back on the manor, expressing his deep disappointment before preparing to depart. Ren watches the man closely, a small bead of sweat showing the tension of the encounter. The group of armored knights begins their long journey back, riding away across the open fields. Standing together in silence, Ren and his father watch until the visitors disappear from sight. A few days pass quietly over the peaceful village as the landscape remains bathed in light. New silhouettes on horseback gallop across the horizon, signaling a change in the atmosphere. A weary knight rides through the fields while supporting a pale, unconscious young girl. The girl remains limp and unresponsive, her face showing signs of great physical exhaustion. Ren pauses his daily chores and stares in shock at the approaching group. He rushes down the hill to meet the weary travelers as they reach his home. The group quickly enters the safety of a sturdy stone manor to find rest. Inside a quiet bedroom, a village woman carefully tends to the feverish girl's brow. The lead knight sits down and apologizes to Ren for their sudden, desperate return. Listening intently, Ren shows deep concern after hearing about the girl's sudden collapse. The knight explains that she is suffering from a rare and specific magical ailment. He reveals that children with immense internal energy often struggle with these sudden symptoms. Resting under heavy blankets, the girl continues to fight against a high, persistent fever. Ren realizes the gravity of the situation and looks on with a troubled expression. He insists that the travelers stay as long as necessary for her full recovery. As night descends, a crescent moon hangs silently over the quiet, worried household. The following morning brings a sense of calm to the manor as sunlight returns. A gloved hand knocks softly on the door of the girl's private medical chamber. The knight announces that Ren has come to visit and asks for permission. Stepping inside with a polite greeting, Ren approaches the bedside to see the patient. The girl looks up at him with a shy expression and noticeably red cheeks. Ren notes her flushed face and wonders if her fever is still causing her discomfort. The girl looks down sadly and offers a quiet apology to Ren. Ren stares back in surprise, caught off guard by her sudden display of humility. She continues to explain her feelings while a single tear tracks down her cheek. Ren waves his hands frantically, insisting that she has no reason to feel guilty. Despite his words, the girl remains downcast and maintains her gloomy demeanor. Sitting up in bed, she discusses the political implications of their current journey. The girl wipes a tear from her eye while opening up about her responsibilities. The moment lingers as the weight of her words hangs in the air. She clutches the bedsheet tightly in frustration, her knuckles turning white with the effort. Ren listens silently, his expression softening as he takes in her heavy burden. He reflects on how someone so young can carry such immense responsibility. Looking away, the girl admits her feelings of helplessness regarding her current state. Her eyes well up with more tears as she expresses her internal struggles. She continues to lament her inability to live up to her lineage. Ren keeps his eyes fixed on her, processing everything she has just confessed. He asks a soft question about her mother, noticing a change in her tone. The girl sniffs and wipes her face again, trying to regain her composure. A brief flashback shows a mother happily lifting her young child into the air. Her hand rests limply on the bed covers as she recalls a painful memory. She stands alone while reflecting on the mother she only knows through portraits. She reflects on the mother whose voice she has never heard, admitting that she still feels a profound connection to her mother's memory. Looking at her combat attire, she feels her mother's support while fighting. The girl explains that the garment was worn by her mother during childhood. Ren realizes the outfit is a memento, a fact he never knew before. She expresses her sincere desire to fulfill the expectations of everyone around her, confessing that all her efforts have recently ended in total failure. Ren remains silent, his expression tight with concern for her well-being. A soft glow illuminates the room as the conversation grows more intense. Looking Ren in the eye, she declares that she is leaving for good. Ren reacts with visible shock, his eyes widening at her sudden announcement. She mentions his refusal of a prestigious invitation to a military academy, stating that she cannot continue to rely on his family's unwavering loyalty. The weight of her words leaves Ren completely stunned and speechless. She offers a final apology for the disturbance she caused his household. Placing a hand over her heart, she expresses her deepest gratitude. Ren is struck by her sincerity. Realizing how truly noble she is, he turns inward, reflecting on the secrets he still hides from her. Looking down in shadow, he feels the heavy burden of his unspoken truths. They stand together in the quiet room as the reality of her parting lingers. A wide landscape reveals a serene valley nestled between rugged mountains under a vast, cloudy sky. Inside the quiet room, the girl remains seated on the bed while Ren continues their talk. Looking down with a somber expression, she seems weighed down by her own difficult thoughts. Ren maintains a serious gaze, his face showing the strain of the emotional moment. Catching a sudden thought, the girl looks up with a renewed sense of purpose. She expresses a need to write a letter to her father and asks to borrow ink. Ren gestures toward the desk, encouraging her to use his supplies with a polite smile. Tilting her head slightly, she asks him if this is actually his own room. Ren confirms her suspicion with an awkward grin, explaining the situation regarding her stay. She looks away, feeling a wave of regret for intruding on his personal space. Ren quickly reassures her, shaking his head to show that he does not mind. He pauses for a moment, his eyes reflecting a deeper resolve than he previously showed. Breaking the tension, Ren suggests she bring a firelighting magic tool upon her return. Her eyes widen in shock as she processes his casual assumption of a future visit. She questions him immediately, unable to understand why he expects her to come back. Ren smiles sheepishly while trying to justify his request with a practical reason. He continues to speak about her next visit with a calm and welcoming demeanor. Becoming flustered and blushing, she reminds him that she intends to leave for good. Ren scratches his head in embarrassment, feeling the heat of her indignant response. He lifts a finger to explain his perspective on why her sudden appearance was so surprising. Ren explains that he is willing to host her again if she contacts him beforehand. She remains stunned by his openness, her expression frozen in quiet disbelief. Turning on his heel, Ren prepares to leave the room to give her some rest. He offers one last warm smile, promising they can talk more once she feels better. The door clicks shut, leaving the girl sitting alone in the heavy silence of the room. Out in the hallway, Ren covers his face, reeling from the awkwardness of his own words. Back inside, she stares at the wooden door, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. She wonders if he truly meant what he said about her returning to this place. Her hands tremble slightly as she clasps them together, feeling a strange new warmth. As she rests, she realizes the nagging headache that plagued her has finally vanished. Looking down with a focused gaze, she decides to take advantage of her newfound clarity. Her bare foot touches the cool floor as she carefully slides out of the bed. Approaching the wooden desk, she prepares to fulfill her promise of writing to her father. She scans the various compartments of the desk to locate the ink and writing materials. Reaching for a small, decorated box, she lifts the lid to see what lies inside. The open box reveals a bottle of ink and several folded sheets of paper. Her curiosity piqued. She tilts her head while looking at the tucked-away documents. She picks up one of the sheets, noticing the texture of the paper beneath her fingers. As she unfolds the letter, she begins reading the passionate and flowery words written inside. Her eye widens in sudden realization as the true nature of the text becomes clear. An older man's words about the paper being a love letter echo in her mind. Her eye widens as a sudden jolt of realization hits her like lightning. She grips the paper with trembling hands, her heart racing in her chest. Pulling the sheet up to hide her face, she panics over why he kept it. She recalls believing the letter was lost and wonders how it was found. The certainty that he read her private thoughts fills her with intense embarrassment. Collapsing onto the floor, she hunches over the paper in a state of despair. She remembers his kind face and gentle smile, which only adds to her turmoil. Looking down, she desperately tries to convince herself the text is not romantic. She mutters excuses about only admiring his strength and character from a distance. A soft, distant look enters her eye as she processes her true feelings. She remains seated on the floor, clutching the folded letter against her chest. She wonders why he would keep the note so carefully instead of discarding it. Carefully placing the document back into the wooden box, she hides it away. Her cheeks flush red as she contemplates if he might actually like her. She finally lets out a long breath and collapses back onto the bed. Lying there with an arm over her eyes, she ponders his secret reaction. Ren's smiling face lingers in her mind, casting a warm glow over her thoughts. Her chaotic thoughts slowly quiet down as she eventually drifts into sleep. The next day arrives at the hillside cottage where several people gather together. Weiss and his men agree to help with hunting and construction tasks in the field. Ren discusses his duties with his companions, while planning to head into the forest. A young girl watches them quietly from behind the stone wall of a window. Leading the way across the grassy meadow, Ren points out the nearby storage shed. She contemplates her steady recovery and the peaceful week of rest lying ahead. A soldier offers a reassuring look while discussing their eventual return to the capital. A massive, spire-like rock stands silent over the lush valley in the morning light. The first few drops of a sudden shower create ripples on the ground. Rain begins to patter softly against the leaves of a nearby tree branch. A steady downpour quickly washes over the dense canopy of the surrounding woods. Gray clouds hang low over the mountains as the weather turns increasingly gloomy. Carrying heavy timber through the mud, Ren and the guards work through the drizzle. The group decides to take a short break beneath the shelter of a large tree. Ren suddenly pauses, his expression shifting as he senses something out of place. He asks the guard beside him if they can smell a strange burning scent. The soldier responds that he only detects the smell of damp grass and earth. A terrifying realization strikes Ren as he looks back toward his family's home. Sweat beads on his brow, while his heart hammers with a sudden, overwhelming dread. He ignores the shouts of his companions and sprints desperately toward the hillside cottage. His worst fears are realized as the entire house is consumed by a violent inferno. Ren sprints desperately across the open field as debris from the explosion trails behind him. His eyes widen in pure shock while he witnesses the destruction from afar. Meanwhile, a massive pillar of dark smoke billows into the sky from the burning estate. Pushing himself to his absolute limit, he continues racing toward the source of disaster. Soon, he discovers the bodies of the guards, scattered lifelessly across the grassy path. A closer look at a fallen soldier confirms the grim reality of the sudden attack. Kneeling beside a corpse, Ren is horrified to find lethal bite marks on the neck. The roar of the fire intensifies as he fears the young lady is still trapped. Gritting his teeth in a mixture of rage and sorrow, he steels his resolve. Drawing his sword, he plunges headlong into the heart of the blazing wreckage. Inside, another guard lies slumped against the wall, silenced forever by the assailant. Covering his mouth to block the suffocating smoke, Ren searches for signs of life. He coughs violently while ascending the burning staircase through the thick, gray haze. Reaching the upper floor, he finds a hooded figure, accompanied by monstrous shadows. The mysterious intruder stands over the sleeping girl, with two winged beasts in tow. Shock paralyzes him for a brief moment as he stares at the terrifying scene. A massive D-rank mana-eater snarls with its jagged teeth bared at the boy. Nearby, the young girl remains peacefully unconscious, unaware of the monsters beside her. Charging forward with a desperate cry, Ren raises his blade to protect the young lady. The hooded stranger speaks his name calmly while observing the boy's arrival. Ren screams for the intruder to stay away while pointing his sword forward. A shadowy monster lunges toward him as the air fills with dark energy. Suddenly, the world begins to warp around the young boy's senses. His body grows heavy, and he collapses onto his hands and knees. Swirling white vapors cloud his vision as he fights to remain upright. A small incense burner is revealed, emitting a thick and hypnotic fragrance. The cloaked stranger claims the scent is strong enough to pacify a dragon. Ren grinds his teeth while trying to resist the crushing wave of exhaustion. Beside him, the young lady remains lost in an unnaturally deep sleep. Eventually, his strength fails, and his hand slips limply to the ground. A roar of orange fire fills the air as time passes by. Ren jolts awake, only to realize his limbs are bound by heavy iron chains. Looking around the dark chamber, he finds himself trapped on a bed of hay. Fear grips his heart as the memory of the attack returns to him. His eyes dart to the side, where the young lady lies shackled nearby. Crawling toward her as much as his chains allow, he calls her name. She does not stir, her breathing shallow and steady against the cold floor. A small sigh of relief escapes him when he confirms she is alive. He turns his head sharply at the sound of a mocking voice. The hooded figure looms over them, remarking on the boy's unexpected early awakening. The hooded driver orders Ren to remain quiet and patient for the journey ahead. Shock washes over the boy as he learns 4 days have already passed. He wonders how many miles now separate them from his home village. The horse-drawn carriage continues its steady climb along a steep mountain pass. Massive peaks loom in the distance under a vast and lonely sky. Ren breaks into a cold sweat while processing the weight of his situation. He demands to know the reason behind their sudden and violent abduction. His captor is revealed to be a beast tamer who summons monsters. Memories of the D-rank twin-headed wolves haunt the boy's mind. Nearby, the young lady gasps for air as her health rapidly declines. Ren watches her with growing desperation, realizing her condition is becoming critical. Her shackled wrists highlight the cruel reality of their imprisonment. A fleeting image of her former gentle self flickers through his mind. His eyes narrow with a fierce and renewed sense of determination. He silently vows that he will not allow her to perish in this place. The weight of his past causes him to sink into a deep trance. His consciousness drifts into a dark realm defined by ripples of memory. A scene from the past shows his father lying broken in a sickbed. The man's pale face serves as a reminder of the thief wolf's brutality. The wind rustles through the leaves as he recalls the village's sorrow. Flames consume the village buildings as a horrific massacre unfolds in Ren's memory. He screams out in agony while witnessing the destruction of his world. The boy desperately cradles his dying mother as tears stream down his face. Surrounded by ruin, he pleads for her to stay alive in this hopeless moment. Suddenly, a mysterious young girl arrives accompanied by armored knights. She reaches out her hands with a gentle and ethereal presence. Acting like a saint, she offers her healing light to the wounded woman. Ren watches in silent awe as the girl attempts to perform a miracle. This pivotal event marks the true beginning of the legend of the seven heroes. The vision fades back into the oppressive darkness of the present. Ren snaps back to reality, finding himself still bound beside the suffering girl. The rattling chains on her wrists emphasize their current state of powerlessness. She struggles to breathe, her face pale as her condition continues to worsen. Outside, the carriage continues its lonely trek through a dense and misty forest. The mysterious driver remains silent, guiding the horse through the rough terrain. Ren stares at the ceiling, wondering why he dreamt of that specific past encounter. He recalls how the girl's kindness once saved his hope during the village tragedy. A dark premonition of future bloodshed flickers briefly across his mind. His gaze sharpens as he searches for a reason behind their current plight. The wheels keep turning as they venture deeper into unknown and dangerous territory. Ren notices the carriage has finally come to a complete halt. A heavy boot crunches against the dry grass as the driver dismounts. The back panel of the carriage swings open to reveal the hooded captor. A water skin and a loaf of bread are tossed carelessly inside. Ren looks up and desperately asks to have his hands untied. The mysterious figure coldly rejects his plea and turns away. He claims that sufficient medicine has already been provided to the girl. Furthermore, he warns that no one can hear their cries through magic. The door slams shut once more as they are left in solitude. Sweat beads on Ren's forehead while he considers his next move. Outside, a small campfire flickers near the horse in the dark woods. Ren manages to grip the water skin between his teeth and pull. He carefully leans over the girl with the container held firmly. A single drop of life-saving water begins to fall through the air. The moisture lands gently on her parched lips as she remains unconscious. More drops flow into her mouth to provide much-needed hydration. The girl lets out a soft moan as the cool liquid revives her. Ren realizes that they must attempt an escape during the night. A bright full moon hangs ominously above the silent wilderness. The vast mountain range looms under the silver light of the midnight sky. The hooded captor rests on a rock by a small fire while the horse grazes. Meanwhile, inside the dark carriage, Ren stares ahead with a look of intense focus. A brilliant light suddenly emanates from his palms behind his bound back. Soon, he manifests the iron magic sword to slice through his heavy iron restraints. The severed links of the chain fall silently onto the wooden floorboards. Ren grips the dark blade and quickly frees his ankles from their shackles. Next, he thrusts the tip of the magical sword through the carriage door's latch. The back panel drops open, allowing Ren to peer out into the night. Surprisingly, the captor remains completely unaware of the escape attempt occurring behind him. Ren secures the unconscious girl onto his back and prepares to flee. Suddenly, his heart sinks as he spots winged monsters circling in the sky. One creature lets out a terrifying shriek while bearing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Ren's pupils dilate with alarm as he senses an incoming aerial attack. The carriage cabin begins to shatter as a sudden impact sends wood splinters flying. Ren dives to the ground with the girl, while a winged monster lands nearby. He looks back over his shoulder in a panic as the situation worsens. A massive pillar of magical energy descends and obliterates the remaining carriage structure. Consequently, the entire vehicle is reduced to a pile of rubble and debris. The hooded figure watches in stunned disbelief as their transport is utterly destroyed. The winged beast roars fiercely, while soaring through the smoke-filled air. A thick shroud of smoke and rain settles over the surrounding forest landscape. Ren charges through the haze while holding the unconscious girl close to his chest. He hurls a spinning blade with incredible force toward his pursuer. The hooded man watches in absolute shock as the weapon whistles through the air. He demands to know how Ren could have possibly hidden such a weapon. A gleaming necklace slips from the wreckage and begins to tumble toward the ground. The thrown sword strikes a nearby tree and severs the horse's tethering ropes. With the restraints gone, the blade remains firmly embedded in the thick bark. Ren suddenly summons the magic sword of wood to his outstretched hand. He aims the leaf-tipped blade directly at the screeching monster above. Massive vines burst forth and entwine the winged creature's limbs in midair. The sudden surge of nature magic catches the hooded captor completely off guard. Thick ivy and thorns rapidly coil around the villain's body to immobilize him. The precious necklace continues its descent through the tangle of growing vegetation. Ren extends his sword tip to snag the falling jewelry before it hits the dirt. He makes a desperate leap toward the startled horse to secure their escape. The trapped sorcerer struggles against the binding vines while shouting in frustration. Quickly switching weapons, Ren manifests the thief's magic sword onto his finger. He uses the sharp claw to snatch the necklace firmly out of the air. The hooded figure can only watch helplessly as Ren and the girl flee. Ren catches the falling necklace with his clawed finger while leaping onto the horse with the girl. The hooded man reaches out in utter disbelief as he realizes his staff and prize are gone. Galloping away, the pair manages to gain some distance from the immediate danger. The winged beast screeches and swoops down from the sky to cut off their retreat. A terrifying maw full of sharp teeth looms directly over Ren and his companion. The creature opens its throat wide to prepare for a devastating attack from above. It suddenly recoils in pain as an unseen force strikes its head mid-flight. Ren stays focused on steering the horse while the massive monster hovers menacingly nearby. The winged predator lets out a frustrated roar as it continues its relentless pursuit. They race deeper into the forest, hoping the dense trees will provide some cover. Standing amidst a cloud of smoke, the hooded villain refuses to let Ren Ashton escape. Glowing runes begin to pulse with dark energy along the sorcerer's outstretched arm. He throws his head back and commands the monsters of the woods to hear his call. A massive magical shockwave ripples outward across the landscape to awaken the local wildlife. Ferocious boars with protruding tusks emerge from the undergrowth with murderous intent. Agile ape-like monsters leap through the forest canopy to join the growing hunt. A giant black wolf sprints through the tall grass with its predatory eyes fixed on the target. Within moments, the horse is quickly overtaken by a stampede of various forest beasts. Glancing back, Ren realizes with a grim expression that the villain is gathering every monster in the vicinity. A circle of snarling predators closes in and leaps simultaneously to crush the fleeing duo. Ren summons the Iron Magic Sword to strike back against the closing circle of beasts, and a sequence of blinding white slashes carves through the air to repel the attackers, causing the sheer force of the technique to hurl the pack of forest monsters into the sky. As Ren and his companion leap their horse over the tumbling predators to escape, while a powerful impact craters the earth behind them as the magical discharge settles, allowing the horse to gallop fiercely across the clearing to put distance from the horde. Yet more agile monsters leap from the sidelines in a desperate attempt to catch them, prompting Ren to maintain a firm grip on the girl while checking the pursuit, before the winged beast unleashes a massive plume of white smoke to envelop the path, which they narrowly outrun as the flying predator continues its relentless aerial assault, charging the stallion forward into the safety of the deeper woods to evade the creature, while shadows of giant wolves flicker through the trees as they maintain their hunt. As the quiet moonlight illuminates a column of smoke rising from the distant forest floor, and the pale moon watches over the landscape while the chaos unfolds in the valley. Far away, the lights of the fortified mountain city of Clausel shine against the night, where Lézard Clausel reacts with visible horror to the report of his daughter being abducted, as his subordinate Vice hangs his head low while expressing his deepest regrets for the failure, kneeling on the carpet to plead for the opportunity to personally lead a rescue, leaving the noble father to stare blankly in silence as he processes the dire news, until he eventually lowers his gaze with a look of profound distress and mounting anxiety. Lézard leans over his desk, struggling to maintain his composure amidst the crisis, sweat dripping from his brow as he remains paralyzed by the weight of the situation, until he suddenly slams his hand onto the wood to regain his resolve, shouting a command to immediately contact the Imperial capital and report the incident. But a servant interrupts to announce the unexpected arrival of visitors from the capital, leaving the Baron stunned by the timing of this sudden development, forcing him to meet 3 stern officials waiting at the foot of the grand staircase, where the lead officer identifies himself as an agent sent by the Minister of Justice. causing Lazard to stare in shock at the grim faces of the Imperial visitors, who unfurl an official scroll accusing him of gross negligence and failure to govern, while elsewhere, heavy rain continues to pelt the dense leaves of the forest, where Ren kneels beside a weakened Risia to offer her a bowl of medicinal herbs, explaining that while the mixture is bitter, it will help reduce her fever, prompting the girl to look down at the bowl with a weary expression before she slowly drinks the dark liquid to soothe her failing strength. As Ren quickly prepares a flask of water to help her with the taste, which she drinks greedily as the young boy holds the container for her, letting out a soft sigh of relief as the cooling liquid settles her throat, while nearby, the clear waters of a shallow stream flow steadily over the rocks. As a boot splashes into the surface to continue the journey through the night, Ren carefully carries the weakened Risia through a rippling stream while leading their horse along. The two travelers soon mount their steed to traverse a wide field beneath the mountains, as Ren observes that the girl's high fever has finally started to break, leading Risia to ask about the source of the bitter herbs he provided, which he explains were traded for monster parts in a village they recently passed, causing the girl to offer a sincere and heartfelt expression of gratitude, though Ren merely smiles and insists that she should not worry about it, as Risia shifts her focus toward the massive landmarks appearing in the distance, where a series of sharp and snow-dusted mountain peaks rise high into the sky, prompting the girl to point her finger toward the towering obstacles ahead, identifying the colossal range specifically as the legendary Baldur Mountain Range, while an aerial view reveals the complex and winding paths leading through the summits, causing Ren to realize he is at the site of a legendary historical battle. Before he turns to ask Risia how many days remain until they reach Clausel, which she answers is about 4 days while worrying about his own family's safety, causing Ren to look at her with a calm and thoughtful expression, though he soon reassures her that his father and the others should be fine, as the girl continues to study him with a trace of lingering concern, leading the boy to maintain a confident smile to keep her spirits high, while they continue their slow journey with the goal of reaching the Baron's estate. Risia looks up with a teary-eyed expression of deep gratitude. She softly repeats her thanks while her hood partially shades her eyes. Dark clouds soon gather as heavy rain begins to fall through the forest canopy. The travelers find refuge from the storm under a large rocky cliffside. Ren begins striking flint and steel together to create a small spark. A modest campfire soon roars to life as he carefully tends to the embers. He places a large feathered beast on the ground to prepare it for dinner. Risia watches with curiosity and asks how he managed to hunt such a creature. She wonders aloud if it was through the power of his mysterious sword. Ren smiles and teases that the secret of his strength must remain hidden. While they wait for the food, Risia reaches into her bag to find something. She reveals a small diamond-shaped pendant hanging from a thin metallic chain. Ren observes the object as she explains that it is a damaged magical tool. She mentions that she managed to take it from her captors during her escape. Ren recalls the kidnappers using a similar item to silence the sounds of the carriage. Risia studies the artifact with the hope that it can serve as future evidence. The pair remains huddled by the warmth of the fire while the rain continues. Ren turns 2 skewers of meat over the flames until they are perfectly cooked. He sprinkles a bit of seasoning onto the meal as the girl watches expectantly. The boy finally offers the hot skewers to Risia on a large green leaf. Risia accepts the meal with a polite nod, gazing down at the humble offering. She takes her first bite of the grilled meat while holding the skewer carefully. Ren watches her reaction intently, hoping the seasoning is to her liking. The girl covers her mouth in surprise as the savory flavors blossom. She smiles brightly and exclaims that the food is absolutely delicious. Ren lets out a sigh of relief and smiles back at her genuine happiness. As the journey resumes, the pair rides together across a vast and rocky plain. They stop by a wild tree where a hand reaches up to pick some fruit. Ren and Risia share a quiet moment while gathering food for their trip. Arriving at a river, they allow their horse to drink under an old stone bridge. Ren takes the opportunity to wash their travel-worn clothes in the clear water. A white dress hangs from a makeshift line to dry in the breeze. Risia waits patiently while wrapped in a large cloth to stay warm. Ren inspects a clean rag before turning his attention back to the girl. She watches him approach with a mixture of curiosity and a shy expression. The boy politely asks to help clean the remaining dirt from her face. He gently wipes her cheek with the damp cloth as she flinches slightly. Ren focuses completely on the task, his expression both serious and caring. He offers a warm smile and suggests they talk more once she feels better. Ricia stares at him in silence as her heart beats faster from his kindness. Ren notices that Ricia's face is still quite red and points it out to her. He reaches out and places his hand against her forehead to check for a fever. The unexpected touch causes Ricia to freeze as her blush deepens further. She suddenly pulls back and insists that nothing is wrong, while Ren looks on, bewildered. Lying down on the ground, the girl clutches her chest and tries to calm her racing heart. She averts her gaze, feeling overwhelmed by the boy's innocent and caring gestures. Ricia holds a piece of parchment tightly against herself, her hands shaking with nervousness. A close-up reveals her wide-eyed shock as she reflects on a hidden secret. She sits huddled on the riverbank and asks Ren if she can ask him a question. Ricia looks away shyly before asking him if he is keeping something from her. Ren stares at her in total surprise, his eyes wide at the unexpected confrontation. She glances down at the letter and wonders why he would keep such a thing. The girl remembers seeing a small wooden chest filled with various trinkets and papers. Ren looks at her with a stunned expression, trying to find the right words to respond. Ricia huffs and tells him not to make her explain the embarrassing details. The boy places a hand on his chin, racking his brain to understand her frustration. A memory flashes of a woman holding a wooden box and questioning his collection. She tells him that empty magic stones are worthless, yet he still gathers them. She smiles while mentioning that his father also loved swords and magic stones just as much. Ren finally wonders if she's referring to the large crate of stones stored in his room. Ren thinks back to his collection of magic stones and wonders if that caused the confusion. Ricia looks away with a troubled expression, feeling the weight of the awkward silence. The boy contemplates his habits while resting his hand thoughtfully against his chin. Ren explains that he has been feeling curious about something since the very first day. Hearing his blunt admission, Ricia gazes at him with an expression of pure shock. She feels her heart race as she processes the possible meaning of his words. Ren continues his explanation in a calm manner, trying to clarify his true intentions. Ricia asks if he is talking about her and calls him unfair for being so blunt. Scratching the back of his head, Ren admits that keeping such items might be considered strange. She hides her face and insists that his choices are not weird at all. The boy wonders if her discomfort stems from items that came from defeated monsters. He offers a sincere apology for his actions as Ricia sits silently by the river. Blushing deeply, the girl claims to understand and begs him not to repeat the explanation. She buries her face in her knees, struggling to handle her overwhelming emotions. Ren watches her with a look of profound confusion, unsure of how to resolve the tension. Ricia softly suggests that they should start addressing each other by their names instead. The boy lets out a gasp of surprise, caught off guard by her sudden request. She remains huddled up, her voice trailing off while she struggles to speak further. Standing under the sunlit forest canopy, she attempts to explain her reasoning. She finally looks him in the eye and firmly tells him to just use her name. Ren stares ahead in complete shock, processing the sudden change in their dynamic. Ricia stays huddled by the water's edge, while Ren stands nearby in stunned silence. Several birds fly across the vast sky over the top of the darkened forest canopy. A quiet village appears along the banks of a winding river amidst the rolling hills. Travelers move through the humble settlement, where sheep and horses wander the dirt paths. The carcass of a large boar rests on the ground after a successful hunt. Ren speaks with an elderly woman who offers him a bag of food for his efforts. Holding the supplies, the boy explains that they are traveling without a specific goal. The woman laughs heartily and points toward the path leading to the Clausel region. Ren tilts his head curiously as he asks what might be happening in that area. She begins to relay a disturbing rumor she heard from a traveler who visited recently. Ricia watches intently from under her hood as the lady mentions Baron Clausel's impending punishment. Her eyes widen in sheer terror at the mention of the dire news regarding her family. The girl shouts in a panic, demanding to know how such a thing could happen. Taken aback by the sudden intensity, the old woman looks up with a startled expression. Rizia presses for more information, while her face pales with visible concern and dread. Sweating nervously, the villager explains that she does not know all the specific details. She mentions an accusation of the Baron setting monsters upon the lands of Viscount Given. Ren reacts with a look of pure horror as the gravity of the situation becomes clear. The pair immediately rushes away, riding their horse at full speed across the open plains. Ren and Rizia ride forward urgently, their faces etched with deep concern. Rizia screams in denial, refusing to believe the scandalous lies about her father. Her eyes fill with tears as she insists the rumors are completely impossible. Ren remains focused on the path ahead, his silence reflecting the gravity of the situation. The vast mountain range stretches across the horizon as they push toward their destination. The magnificent white city of Clausel finally comes into view atop a distant hill. A heavy wooden wheel rattles against the cobblestones of a bustling city street. A luxurious carriage pulled by white horses moves through a wealthy urban district. Onlookers whisper among themselves as they watch the carriage pass through the town. The door to the carriage clicks open, signaling the arrival of a high-ranking official. A polished black boot steps firmly onto the pavement as a passenger disembarks. A confident blond man in armor smiles while his knights stand ready behind him. He speaks of seizing the territory to expand the power of the hero faction. A stern man with a trimmed beard listens with a cold and calculating gaze. Peering through his glasses, the older man radiates an aura of immense authority. Leaning on his cane, he stands before banners as he plans to transform the kingdom. Images of a unicorn crest flicker as various parties prepare for the coming conflict. The grand towers of a massive cathedral loom over the surrounding cityscape. A young man sits with crossed arms, waiting tensely alongside a veteran knight. The bearded noble sits poised in the hall, guarded by a silent warrior in full plate. An official closes a thick book, signaling the end of the day's legal proceedings. The judge stares intently while declaring that the imperial court will strictly uphold the law. Echoes of murmurs fill the grand cathedral as the crowd begins to disperse for the evening. Commoners exchange worried glances and hushed whispers while filing out of the wooden pews. A young man and a veteran knight stand silently on the balcony overlooking the hall. The knight breaks into a cold sweat, fearing the inevitable transfer of prisoners to the capital. Baron Clausel looks visibly shaken as he considers the possibility of a desperate trial by combat. Ren gazes toward the opposing balcony where his adversary sits in cold, calculated triumph. The bearded noble leans back with his cane, exuding absolute confidence in his orchestrated victory. A menacing glint reflects off the noble's glasses as he glares with predatory intensity. Ren clenches his jaw while realizing the current political maneuvers are far too aggressive. Doubts swirl within his mind regarding the true nature of this brutal power struggle. The full moon hangs high in the night sky over the silent, snow-capped mountain peaks. By the flickering light of a small campfire, Ren keeps watch beside his resting horse. Rizia lies tucked beneath a heavy traveling cloak, finally finding a moment of peaceful sleep. Deep in thought, Ren realizes the Baron will be framed unless he intervenes immediately. He stares into the darkness, questioning his own ability to change such a grand destiny. Rizia stirs from her slumber and asks why he is still awake and brooding. Turning his head, Ren admits he is searching for a way to help her family. He looks on in surprise as she offers a word of comfort during the cold night. Rizia looks up at Ren with a blush, suggesting they address each other more informally. Ren stares back with a soft expression, contemplating the shift in their relationship. Rizia sits up and declares that they should depart as soon as dawn breaks. Their horse waits patiently in the moonlight while they discuss returning to Clausel to testify. Ren listens quietly, his face filled with a serious determination regarding the road ahead. Dark, monstrous silhouettes loom in his mind as he questions who will believe their story. He realizes they need concrete evidence to link the kidnapping to the corrupt bearded noble. Rizia looks down solemnly, understanding the heavy burden of proof they must carry. Thin clouds drift across the dark forest canopy, while time continues to slip away. As dawn lightens the sky, the pair rides their horse through a vast grassy field. They pass by the looming, skeletal remains of a massive stone cathedral on the hill. The horse carries them through a narrow, rocky passage between towering cliffs. Emerging into a bright, open meadow, They maintain a steady pace toward their destination. From a distance, the small figures move across a snowy clearing surrounded by dense evergreens. The vast mountain range stretches across the horizon under a clear morning sky. Reaching the edge of the woods, Risha pushes aside a leafy branch to look ahead. She points toward the path, explaining that Clausel will be visible once they clear the hills. Ren asks if they are finally safe, and Rizia confirms that her family's knights should be nearby. Suddenly, the sound of leaves rustling and footsteps alerts them to a presence in the undergrowth. An armed figure emerges from the shadows of the trees to intercept their approach. Ren and Rizia stop abruptly, their eyes wide with shock at a sudden encounter. A detailed view of polished plate armor reveals the presence of a high-ranking soldier. A blonde knight atop a white steed appears, offering a seemingly warm greeting. The realization that he belongs to Count Given's forces sends a jolt through them. He explains that his unit has been searching for them on the Baron's orders. Rizia stares downward, her expression clouded with doubt about the knight's true intentions. Unexpected movement in the thicket signals the arrival of even more hidden companions. Ren shifts his focus to the foliage, sensing he is being watched from all sides. A full squad of armored riders emerges from the woods to encircle the duo. The soldiers sit motionless in their saddles, their visors hiding any hint of emotion. With a polite gesture, the lead knight invites them to follow him to safety. Ren glares back with narrowed eyes, refusing to lower his guard around the newcomers. Rizia lowers her head further into her hood, masking her growing apprehension. She leans toward Ren and quietly asks him to trust her with the situation. Ren looks at her, caught off guard by her sudden request for control. She whispers a warning about the danger ahead while keeping her voice low. Ren acknowledges her plan with a sharp, determined look in his eyes. The knight tilts his head, questioning the nature of their private discussion. Rizia remains silent for a moment, gathering her courage before making her move. She addresses the knight directly, initiating a gamble to ensure their safe passage. Rizia asserts that their cooperation hinges entirely on the knight's forthcoming answer. The lead knight keeps his expression neutral, despite the weight of her words. Drawing an ornate, glowing pendant from her cloak, Rizia holds it up for inspection. A sharp flicker of recognition crosses the knight's face at the sight of the gem. He attempts to brush off the significance of the artifact with a strained smile. Rizia observes him closely, teasingly noting the brief twitch of his brow. Silence falls as the knight's gaze hardens into a look of cautious suspicion. She identifies the object as a magic tool recovered from their captor's possession. The knight stares intently at her, his mind clearly racing to find a response. Moving his horse closer, he formally requests to take the item into custody. Rizia flatly denies him, announcing her plan to consult the Merchant Guild instead. The knight's jaw drops as he realizes the implications of a professional appraisal. She emphasizes that the guild tracks high-value transactions to their original source. Nervously, he tries to convince her that such an investigation is entirely futile. Rizia counters by stating that a rare item like this always leaves a trail. Visible panic begins to spread among the ranks of the surrounding soldiers. She explains that identifying the merchant will lead straight to the real mastermind. Looking away, she muses on the severe legal consequences awaiting the person responsible. The knight's face pales as he finds himself trapped by her logical argument. Rizia ends with a chilling smile, asking him if he finds her proposal fair. Rizia and Ren remain steadfast on their horses while facing the group of armored knights. The soldiers exchange uncertain glances in the heavy silence following her bold declaration. Narrowing her eyes, Rizia maintains her intense focus on the leader to gauge his next move. Sweat beads on the lead knight's forehead as he struggles to maintain his crumbling composure. He offers a strained suggestion that his unit should take charge of the magical artifact. Firmly clutching the pendant, she reminds them that they are currently within her family's territory. A surge of desperation flashes across his face as he attempts to argue against her refusal. Exasperated by the knight's lack of reason, Risha closes her eyes and ends the discussion. She signals for Ren to follow as they begin to ride past the stationary soldiers. Their horse takes a decisive step forward to leave the tense encounter behind them. The lead knight suddenly shouts out, insisting that they still require a formal escort. Maneuvering to block them, he tries one last time to force his protection upon her. Risia looks away and declares that she cannot trust anyone but Ren to keep her safe. The knight stares at her with wide eyes, stunned by her blunt and public refusal. She maintains a composed silence, effectively ending any further attempt at civil conversation. Gritting his teeth in fury, the commander reaches a point of no return. With a sudden motion, he draws his sword and demands that they follow his orders. Risia gasps in surprise and calls out to Ren as the sword is drawn. A hand moves with incredible speed to unsheath the blade in response to the threat. Ren effortlessly shatters the knight's sword into pieces with a single, lightning-fast strike. Ren shatters the commander's sword, forcing the broken blade into the air as the knight recoils. Shocked by the strength of the blow, the knight stares at his cracked armor and broken weapon. Risia observes the confrontation, while Ren keeps his sword raised against the staggered enemy. Maintaining her composure, she speaks to the knight as a spark of light appears in her hand. A brilliant star of energy forms between her fingers, casting a white glow over the scene. She opens her hand wide, unleashing a massive burst of holy magic against her pursuers. Wearing a determined smile, she taunts the commander as the blinding light consumes the area. The force of the magical explosion knocks the knight from his horse and scatters the soldiers. He screams in frustration and pain, while the holy energy surges through the clearing. The other guards scramble to regain their senses and shout to prevent the duo from fleeing. Ren swiftly unsheathes a dark, ornate magic sword to provide cover for their escape. Identified as a magic wooden blade, the weapon begins to emanate a powerful green aura. He swings the sword, causing massive vines to erupt from the ground and entangle the soldiers. The knights struggle against the thick, leafy branches that rapidly bind them and their horses. Seizing the opportunity, Ren and Risia gallop away from the trapped unit at high speed. The commander drops to his knees, gritting his teeth in fury as he realizes they have escaped. He barks out orders for a chase to begin, while promising to report the incident to the Viscount. The pair races through the dense forest, the horse kicking up dirt as they flee the scene. A large, luminous moon hangs over the clouds as the night deepens. The silhouettes of three riders gallop along a jagged mountain path under the cold moonlight. The horses' hooves strike the ground with rhythmic intensity as the escape continues through the night. Refusing to give up, the armored knights gallop close behind while yelling for the pair to stop. Ren casts a worried glance over his shoulder and notes that they haven't shaken their pursuers yet. Risia clings tightly to the horse's mane and whispers desperate words of encouragement to the animal. Across the moonlit landscape, the two groups traverse a steep incline far above the forest floor. An ominous figure, draped in a cloak, sits silently on a tall rock formation, flanked by flying monsters. Sensing a new presence, Ren looks up, and his eyes widen in realization of the looming danger. The hooded tamer remains motionless on the pillar, while the winged beasts emit a menacing aura. A pale hand reaches out as the stranger speaks, declaring that the duo's path was perfectly predicted. Horrified by the revelation, Ren stammers out the name of a beast tamer as he realizes the trap. The ground suddenly begins to crack and buckle under the influence of the tamer's mysterious power. Massive boulders and jagged shards of earth burst upward to form a chaotic blockade across the trail. Caught in the middle of the upheaval, the horse neighs in fear while rocks fly in every direction. A surreal flood of overgrown vines and strange fungal growths pours out from the ruptured soil. The magical surge of flora intensifies, creating a dense forest of twisted trunks and jagged debris. Mutated sunflowers and a horde of snarling, sharp-toothed rodents emerge from within the thick undergrowth. Seeing the chaos, Risia turns to Ren and urgently requests a sword to help defend themselves. The massive swarm of aggressive mice shifts its focus and rushes toward the unsuspecting knights. Terrified soldiers try to fend off the biting vermin that leap from the ground to scale their horses. A towering wave of ravenous rats finally crashes over the guards and consumes them in a frenzy of violence. The tamer stands atop a jagged rock, mocking the heroes while winged monsters circle. Ren and Risia find themselves trapped in the center of a dense fungal forest. High-pitched buzzing fills the air as giant wasps join the surrounding horde of monsters. Ricia firmly grips the hilt of the sword and draws it for battle. She immediately begins slicing through the thick vines and insects blocking their path. More sentient mushrooms and bizarre flora sprout rapidly around the hooves of the horse. With intense determination, the girl delivers a powerful slash through the encroaching vegetation. Sliced remnants of the fungal creatures fly through the air in every direction. Ren stares in shock as Regia skillfully carves a path through the chaotic battlefield. She shouts out her resolve to never lose again while swinging her blade. Grotesque, toothy maws emerge from the dirt as carnivorous plants join the assault. A massive, fleshy tentacle slams down onto the trail with crushing force. The duo navigates through a surreal landscape of explosions and attacking monsters. Glancing around, Ren realizes they are completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. He looks toward the hooded figure and concludes that the tamer must be defeated. Shattering rocks tumble from the cliffside as the horse gallops through the shifting terrain. Ricia cries out in terror as she senses a massive presence rising from below. An enormous, multi-mouthed worm erupts from the ground and towers over the small horse. Staring upward in pure horror, Ricia witnesses the true scale of the underground beast. The gargantuan predator opens its jagged, multi-layered jaws to swallow the riders whole. Ren summons the heavy iron magic sword into his grip. He readies a defensive stance as magical energy pulses from the blade. With a sharp and determined gaze, the boy prepares his counterattack. A vertical beam of intense light tears through the monster's open mouth. Ren raises his glowing weapon high while protecting Ricia on the horse. The massive worm monster is cleaved in two by the sheer force of the strike. Black ichor explodes outward as the creature falls back into the fungal forest. Ricia watches in stunned silence, amazed by Ren's unexpected displays of power. On a distant cliff, the mysterious tamer watches the battle with quiet interest. Ren turns his attention toward the hooded figure looming over the battlefield. The tamer's long hair flows freely as the hood slips back. Intense wind pressure from the sword strike continues to whip through the area. The elegant figure marvels that Ren's power could reach such heights. A tall, graceful elf appears, looking down at the duo with detached eyes. Ren's eyes widen in sudden horror as he identifies the new enemy. The elf grips a wooden staff while standing amidst the gnarled tree limbs. Frozen in realization, the boy stares at the legendary boss character. The pair looks tiny as they traverse the heart of the overgrown fungal valley. Stark white branches frame the reveal of the tamer's true name and title. This legendary beast tamer stands high upon a tree, preparing to cast nature magic. The moon hangs high over the shifting clouds, while a legendary tale of a wandering adventurer begins. Ren and Ricia gallop desperately through a valley overflowing with a sea of grotesque fungal monsters. Looking back in a cold sweat, Ren wonders how such a formidable boss character could appear here. The exiled elf stands motionless atop a jagged rock, his presence looming over the chaotic battlefield. A chilling close-up reveals the tamer's cold eyes and his dark history of slaughtering his own kin. Heavy iron chains wrap around his tattooed arms to signify the powerful magic seals binding his strength. Nearby, a hooded figure raises a staff that pulses with light to stabilize the tamer's suppressed abilities. Ren realizes the elf is unable to cast nature magic because he broke the creature's staff earlier. Memories of a secret deal surface, showing a glowing pendant being offered in exchange for breaking seals. The vast swarm of monsters continues to surge forward through the smoky and desolate mountain pass. Ricia suddenly turns her head toward Ren with a look of intense focus amidst the surrounding chaos. While clinging to the horse, she asks if he truly believes they can survive this dire situation. Ren stares back in surprise, caught off guard by her sudden change in demeanor and questioning tone. His gaze sharpens as he evaluates the overwhelming strength of the enemies guarding the path ahead. Two more wolf-like beasts stand beside the elf, ready to pounce from their high vantage point. Ren calculates that their chances of winning will plummet if those D-rank monsters enter the fight. Despite the mounting pressure, Ricia keeps her composure and waits for the perfect moment to act. A mysterious smile crosses the girl's face as she prepares to unveil her hidden capabilities. Risia draws a shining blade and proudly declares her true identity as the legendary Saintess of White. Ren can only stare in disbelief as a brilliant explosion of holy light erupts from his companion. A swirling aura of brilliant light envelops Risia, while Ren watches in total astonishment. The radiant energy intensifies until it forms a massive pillar of blinding white. Ren is completely mesmerized by the overwhelming presence of the Saintess's awakening magic. He maintains a firm hold on his weapon as the air vibrates with holy power. Sensing a shift in the battle, the elf tamer stares down with a look of surprise. The dense pack of fungal monsters is momentarily frozen by the sudden magical eruption. Ren focuses his gaze forward as the light begins to reshape the chaotic landscape. Countless monsters crowd the valley as the magical pressure begins to mount. More fungal creatures swarm together, unaware of the impending holy destruction. Ren raises his sword as the duo is completely surrounded by the encroaching horde. The surrounding monsters continue to press forward in an endless sea of shadows. Even more grotesque beings join the blockade to prevent the duo from escaping. A massive magical burst erupts as a final surge of power builds. The explosion tears through the ranks of the monsters, clearing a path through the valley. Realizing the nature of the attack, the elf identifies the casting of high-level holy magic. Disintegrated remains of the fungal creatures fill the air as the spell subsides. Ren and Risia grip their weapons tightly as they catch their breath on horseback. A wide view of the battlefield reveals the elf commanding a dragon to join the fight. The small dragon-like beast opens its maw as it swoops down from the heights. The flying monster releases a massive torrent of energy aimed directly at the escaping pair. Enormous flames of holy light erupt around the horse as Ren and Risia prepare to charge. Risia focuses her magical aura, raising her hand to channel the intensifying radiant energy. The small dragon dives through the light, but is met with a sharp counteroffensive. A powerful strike tears through the flying beast, sending dark blood spraying into the air. Nearby, a swarm of rodent-like monsters is completely engulfed in the purifying heat. Ren narrows his eyes with absolute resolve, placing his full trust in Risia's awakening power. A massive shockwave incinerates the enemy forces, while the elf observes from a high vantage point. Risia maintains her concentration, her expression hardening as the magical pressure continues to rise. Bladed energy waves crisscross the battlefield, shredding the remaining monsters in a single instant. Standing atop a rocky peak, the elf tamer watches the overwhelming magical display in silence. The duo continues their frantic escape on horseback as the valley behind them vanishes in smoke. A sudden shift in the atmosphere causes the elf's long hair to flutter in the wind. Ren's eyes widen in realization as he senses a final, desperate move from their pursuer. He thrusts his sword forward, unleashing a blinding beam of light to intercept the creature. The strike pierces directly through the dragon's center, halting its lethal descent toward the pair. Ren gasps for air as the extreme strain of the combat begins to take its toll. With a final surge of strength, the blade finds its mark deep within the monster's maw. The dragon is completely cleaved by the force of the strike, showering the battlefield in gore. A violent explosion suddenly rocks the ground, throwing Ren and Risia violently from their horse. Ren tumbles through the air while desperately reaching out for Risia amidst the unfolding chaos. Ren and Risia are thrown violently through the air as their horse collapses. The elf tamer watches as the dark dragon head dissipates into shadowy particles. Jagged rocks and debris are sent flying by the force of the massive explosion. Blood splatters across the elf's face as he stares in stunned silence. Massive boulders tumble down onto the remains of the monster swarm. A thick plume of smoke rises into the night air above the battlefield. The moon glows dimly behind drifting clouds as the chaos momentarily subsides. Small fires continue to burn among the heaps of defeated mushroom monsters. The riderless horse gallops away into the darkness to escape the destruction. Ren lands on the ground and immediately pulls Risia into a protective embrace. He holds her close and asks if she is all right with visible concern. Risia gasps for breath, her eyes closed as she suffers from extreme exhaustion. Ren realizes the heavy burden that using holy magic has placed on her. A dark-booted foot steps heavily onto a nearby rock. signaling a presence. Turning his head, Ren spots the elf tamer standing amidst the flickering flames. The elf clutches his face as a sinister dark energy begins to manifest. Ren's eyes widen with terror at the sudden change in his opponent's aura. Dark spots spread across the elf's hand while he reveals a hidden tattoo. A sinister expression begins to creep across the elf's face. He lets out a chilling laugh while relishing the surge of dark power. The elf tamer stands atop a pile of rubble, muttering to himself as blood drips from his body. He throws his head back in a fit of hysterical laughter, while the chaos continues around him. Looking down at his feet, he watches as a massive pool of his own blood begins to gather. He examines his blood-soaked arm and speaks of releasing the seal that suppressed his violent urges. The elf clutches his face with his trembling, stained fingers as he continues to revel in the carnage. Nearby, Ren maintains his tight grip on Rizia while staring at his enemy with a mixture of concern and focus. The tamer drops to his knees on the rocky ground, his body shaking from the intensity of his shifting power. Rizia remains unconscious and frail in Ren's arms, her breathing shallow from the heavy toll of her magic. A single, wide eye peers out from behind the elf's fingers, gleaming with a terrifying and newfound madness. The elf pauses in the darkness to question if he is still capable of finishing his prey. His gaze sharpens into a piercing stare that radiates pure malice toward the two survivors. Standing tall again, the elf describes the twisted pleasure he feels when watching the faces of the dying. A dark aura masks his features, leaving only a ghoulish grin visible amidst the spreading gloom. Ren calls out to his opponent, refusing to back down even as the situation grows increasingly dire. Behind the elf, a massive tail of dark energy sweeps across the landscape, shattering nearby boulders. A monstrous dragon formed of pure shadow manifests behind him, towering over the broken rocks. Dark lines continue to spread across the elf's skin as he fully embraces the corruption of his magic. He reaches out his blood-streaked hand and calls upon the Mana Eater to consume his enemies. The tamer laughs wildly as he commands the darkness to devour everything in its path. His face contorts into a final, horrifying mask of insanity as he prepares to unleash his full might. The Shadow Dragon's massive jaws gape open, showcasing rows of razor-sharp teeth as it prepares to strike. Standing amidst floating chains, the tamer extends his blood-patterned arms, while his face remains shrouded in darkness. Suddenly, the monstrous shadow creature lunges forward and clamps its teeth onto the tamer's own arm. Ren watches the self-destructive display with wide eyes, his face sweating from the intense pressure of the battle. Black fluid erupts in a violent spray as the dragon continues its savage assault on its master's limb. Despite the excruciating pain, the elf throws his head back and laughs at the prospect of total despair. The dragon's fangs sink deeper into the tamer's flesh, tearing through the intricate markings on his skin. Crouched low, the beast remains locked onto the arm, while the surrounding ground is stained with dark residue. The tamer looks on with a haunting grin as the dragon pulls back, a severed limb dangling from its maw. Without warning, glowing magical chains manifest and bind the tamer tightly, catching him completely off guard. He grits his teeth in frustration, his single visible eye darting around as he feels his movements restricted. A close-up reveals his crazed pupil, shrinking in a moment of sheer, unhinged realization about his limitations. A twisted, skeletal tree stands starkly against the horizon, marking the desolate nature of the battlefield. Bound by iron links, the elf stands among the dead branches and declares that he has nothing left to lose. A brilliant flash of light cuts through the gloom, moving with incredible speed toward the restrained target. The impact is instantaneous and brutal, sending a massive spray of blood into the air as the tamer is pierced. Gasping for air, the elf looks down as blood begins to spill from his lips, following the devastating blow. The shadow dragon continues to tower over the scene, its dark form flickering like a nightmare-given shape. Nearby, a small glass vial becomes ensnared within the reach of a dark, gnarled branch. The delicate container suddenly shatters into 1,000 pieces, releasing its contents into the chaotic air. The spilled liquid from the vial douses the tamer as he stands amidst the gnarled branches. Tilting his head back, The elf lets the fluid drip down his face while mocking the quality of the potion. Holding Rissia in his arms, Ren stands his ground while the shadow dragon roars behind them. Ren carefully sets the unconscious girl down on the rough terrain to prepare for the final confrontation. With a sharp movement, he draws his blade and focuses his resolve on the towering enemy. The tamer remains trapped within the twisting limbs of the tree, his body seemingly merging with the wood. A dark shadow falls over his face as he reveals a terrifying, wide-eyed grin of pure malice. Gritting his teeth, Ren charges across the broken earth toward the massive, winged beast. A sudden explosion of dark energy erupts in front of him, momentarily obscuring the battlefield. The shadow dragon lunges forward with a massive clawed limb reaching out to crush the boy. Ren's eyes widen in shock as he realizes the sheer speed of the monster's counterattack. A crushing blow strikes the ground inches away, sending shards of stone flying in every direction. The force of the shockwave sends Ren reeling backward, his body tumbling through the air. Struggling to stay conscious, he manages to keep his grip on his sword while falling. The beast's massive form slams into the ground again, creating a deep crater in the bedrock. Rolling across the jagged surface, Ren desperately tries to find an opening amidst the chaos. The flickering dragon stands tall once more, its shadowy frame pulsing with dark intent. Skidding across the dirt, Ren gasps for air while trying to stabilize his stance. A violent streak of black energy tears through the sky, narrowly missing the young warrior. The dragon whips its heavy tail in a devastating circle to clear the area of all resistance. Ren is hurled through the air as debris from the impact flies alongside him. Blood streaks across his face while he struggles to process the monster's incredible power. The tamer watches from the safety of the gnarled tree limbs, observing the lopsided battle. Skidding across the dry earth, Ren finally comes to a stop face down in the dirt. The shadow dragon looms over his broken form as he desperately tries to stand. Trembling with exhaustion, he grits his teeth while contemplating the creature's overwhelming rank. His fingers dig deep into the soil as he forces himself to find a second wind. The beast snarls, its jaw opening wide to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. Clutching his sword, Ren prepares to meet the dragon's next assault head-on. The massive beast stands tall and lets out a deafening roar that shakes the ground. Rissia stirs from her unconscious state and witnesses the terrifying scene unfolding before her. The dragon lunges forward with predatory speed, its head aimed directly at the young warrior. Ren swings his blade with all his remaining strength to parry the incoming strike. A violent explosion of energy erupts from the collision, clearing the area of debris. The force of the blast sends Ren tumbling backward toward the ridge where Rissia lies. He collapses onto the hard ground, coughing up blood as his body reaches its limit. Eyes wide with fear, Rissia watches in horror as her protector fails to rise. The shadowy monster advances slowly toward them, its presence suffocating the entire battlefield. A look of grim concern remains on Rissia's face as she assesses the dire situation. The elf continues to mock them from his wooden throne, reveling in the impending slaughter. The tamer lets out a wicked laugh while relishing the sight of his victim's misery. Ren and Rissia lie motionless on the cracked earth as the battle pauses briefly. Rissia struggles to maintain consciousness, while her strength continues to fade away. She slowly lifts her hand and focuses her remaining mana into a single point. A brilliant explosion of white light suddenly envelops the two fallen companions. The shimmering particles of magic rain down upon Ren's broken and battered body. His eyes snap open as the rejuvenating energy begins to mend his wounds. Rissia gently takes his hand in hers, offering a final gesture of support. She looks down with a melancholic expression while speaking softly to her protector. Ren gazes back at her in shock, barely able to believe she saved him. A faint smile touches Rissia's lips as she accepts their dire circumstances. She urges him to leave her behind and save himself from the monster. Looking into his eyes, she expresses her gratitude for everything he has done. The young woman continues her heartfelt plea while tears begin to well up. Ren's pupils dilate as he absorbs the weight of her selfless request. The shadow dragon's massive claw suddenly crashes down, shaking the very earth. Debris and dust fill the air as the beast continues its relentless assault. Ren stares at Rishia, with a newfound fire burning in his determined eyes. She watches him with a mixture of sadness and hope as he moves. Clutching his sword tightly, Ren stands tall to face the towering dragon once more. Ren looks up with a bloodied face, while a powerful force rushes past him. He reaches for his weapon with a trembling hand, determined to keep fighting. With a sudden burst of energy, he swings his blade in a wide, shimmering arc. He manages to intercept the dragon's massive claw, bracing for a direct impact. The sword vibrates violently against the beast's overwhelming strength. Ren grits his teeth and narrows his eyes while enduring the crushing pressure. He focuses his remaining mana into the blade as the struggle intensifies. The ground beneath him shatters into pieces from the weight of the blow. Despite the pain, he holds the claw back to shield the unconscious Rishia. He lets out a desperate roar that echoes across the devastated battlefield. A blinding flash of light erupts at the center of the clash. The shadow dragon looms over its prey with a terrifying, predatory gaze. It reveals its jagged fangs while preparing to deliver a finishing bite. The monstrous creature raises its heavy limb for another lethal strike. Ren's fingers slip from his hilt as the force sends his weapon flying. The dragon lunges forward with its wings spread to block out the light. Ren is thrown backward while his sword remains stuck firmly in the earth. The discarded blade spins through the air during the chaotic struggle. He collapses onto his back, reaching out one last time with a faint cry. Both he and Rishia lie motionless on the cracked ground as silence falls. Ren cries out in agony as he lies battered beside the unconscious Rishia, while the shadow dragon looms over them with a murderous intent. Suddenly, a brilliant light begins to pulsate from the bracelet on Ren's wrist. His eyes widen in shock as the unexpected glow catches his attention. Magical particles swirl around his arm as he stares at the transforming relic. The intricate engravings on the metal band shine with increasing intensity. Mysterious symbols and level indicators flicker into existence through a magical interface. He looks down at the artifact in confusion while questioning this sudden change. Above him, the monstrous dragon prepares a final devastating blow. Ren's fear evaporates and is replaced by a look of absolute defiance. The beast's massive claws tear through the air with lethal velocity. A shadow falls over the pair as the crushing strike descends upon them. Ren remains grounded, but begins to summon his inner strength. He thrusts his glowing arm toward the heavens with a desperate roar. An enormous pillar of radiant energy erupts from his hand into the sky. His gaze sharpens as he fully embraces the surging power within. A figure with blood-streaked eyes watches the unfolding scene from the shadows. The dragon snarls while caught in the path of the rising light. A massive explosion of mana ripples outward in a blinding vortex. Ren strikes the beast with a fist of pure light to repel the darkness. A blinding radiance consumes the dragon's massive wings as the divine energy surges forward. The monstrous beast recoils in agony while its shadow form begins to fragment under the pressure. Glowing particles tear through the creature's scales as it struggles against the overwhelming power. The dragon's jaw hangs open in a final roar before the light completely erases its presence. Nearby, a hidden spectator watches from a gnarled tree while gripped by a sudden paralyzing shock. Blood trickles from the elf's mouth as he stares at the impossible display of strength before him. The residual mana expands into a vast white void that bleaches the entire battlefield. A dense orb of concentrated energy pulses violently in the center of the scorched earth. The swirling vortex of light begins to stabilize while drawing the surrounding atmosphere inward. A colossal pillar of brilliant white energy erupts toward the heavens with earth-shattering force. The beam of light pierces through the dark clouds to illuminate the distant mountain ranges. Waves of pure power ripple through the air as the intense glow starts to dissipate. Ren reaches out with his trembling hand while the last remnants of the energy flicker out. He stands amidst the settling dust and looks down at his fallen companion with heavy breaths. Rishia remains motionless on the cold ground while the silence of the aftermath takes hold. Ren's expression hardens as he assesses the cost of their narrow escape from the darkness. He contemplates the hidden truth behind his weapon as the weight of his action settles. An overhead view reveals the pair resting in the center of a massive, glowing crater. The sky above the forest begins to clear as the unnatural storm finally subsides. The sprawling city of Clausel stands tall on the horizon as their journey's destination finally appears. The morning sun shines upon the towering spires of the grand city of Clausel. A gentle voice whispers into the quiet room to wake a sleeping boy. The child sits up in bed as he learns that Baron Clausel will be moved. In a dim cellar, two men discuss the trial while sharing a morning drink. Townspeople wander the steep cobblestone streets while gossiping about high-ranking noble influence. A formal procession of horses and carriages winds through the narrow alleyways of the capital. Ren watches the passing crowd with a focused and sweat-beaded expression. Armored knights lead a man in formal attire through the center of the bustling town. A distinguished bearded man with glasses rides tall at the head of the royal escort. A young blonde knight contemplates the political shift once they reach their final destination. Memory fragments of Ren's childhood with a kind knight flicker briefly through his mind. A luxury carriage halts in the street while commoners whisper about a country knight's son. The bearded noble's gaze remains cold and calculating behind his thin spectacles. He speaks with a dismissive smirk regarding the insignificance of those from the countryside. The blonde knight looks back in confusion at the harshness of the noble's words. The man in glasses ignores the stare while continuing his stern internal monologue. Dark smoke swirls around the conversation as hidden truths begin to surface. Dust settles over the ancient bookshelves of a secluded and quiet study. The noble's eye widens with ambition as he reveals his plan for the Ashton family. His companion gasps in shock at the sudden revelation of the man's true intentions. The noble turns his horse away, leaving behind words of a truth only he currently knows. He adjusts his glasses while dwelling on the unsettling events that transpired in the forest. A brilliant pillar of light erupts from the distant mountains, signaling the Saintess's divine presence. The blonde knight acknowledges his new orders to capture those responsible for the disturbance. The royal procession continues its slow march through the crowded streets of the capital. The noble's expression hardens as he reminds his subordinates that failure is absolutely forbidden. As they approach the grand estate, the blonde knight notices something unusual among the onlookers. A stern-faced man in formal attire watches the arriving knights with a wary gaze. The heavy gates of Clausel loom large as the escort finally enters the inner city. Tension mounts as the armored group passes through the threshold of the fortress. Far from the city, a solitary rider gallops across a misty plain toward the rising sun. Anxious whispers ripple through the crowd of citizens gathered near the palace walls. A veteran knight pulls his reins in sudden realization as a familiar figure appears. The rider pushes forward, bathed in a celestial glow that cuts through the morning fog. The veteran's eyes widen in disbelief at the person approaching from the wilderness. Rizia reveals herself with a calm and determined look, her presence demanding immediate attention. Horses thunder across the open landscape as more riders move to intercept the newcomer. Spears are leveled at a startled traveler who is caught in the middle of the commotion. The cloaked rider sweeps past the stunned guards to reach the veteran knight's side. Rizia lowers her head and insists that explanations must wait until they are safe. Rizia supports a clearly exhausted Ren who leans heavily against her shoulder. The noble in glasses stares intensely, his expression remaining unreadable behind his spectacles. Rizia halts the noble's procession and addresses the man as Viscount Given. The noble dismisses the confrontation by reminding her that he holds a high title. Rizia fires back with a cold glare, stating she has no courtesy for criminals. A flicker of surprise crosses the noble's face as he absorbs her blunt defiance. He grins mockingly, turning the blame back on Rizia's father for the current disaster. The Saintess's eyes narrow as she absorbs the weight of his calculated lies. The noble observes the pair, noting that they appear physically and mentally spent. He leans in with a sharp gaze, mocking the effort they took to get here. A horse stamps its hoof as the noble points out their fading consciousness. Rizia looks down momentarily, taking a deep breath to steady her shaking resolve. She reaches into her cloak, daring the noble to keep his smug composure. The noble's expression tenses as he waits for her to reveal her hidden item. Rizia holds up a glowing diamond-shaped magical tool recovered from the elven assassins. A dismissive laugh escapes the noble as he looks at the small evidence. He scoffs at the Saintess, claiming her accusations are beneath her holy station. Rizia stands her ground, declaring that his hired elves were the ones who attacked. The man removes his glasses, asking why he should be involved in such matters. The noble calmly cleans his lenses, while questioning the validity of her single piece of proof. Rizia grits her teeth while struggling to maintain her composure during the heated exchange. She argues that the proximity of the attack proves the knight's involvement in the conspiracy. Viscount Given dismissively adjusts his spectacles while denying any wrongdoing by his men. A steady hand points directly at the line of soldiers standing behind the noble. Rizia singles out a specific knight for attacking her and Ren in the forest. The accused soldier breaks into a nervous sweat as the focus shifts toward him. Given turns to his subordinate with a sharp look to confirm the girl's story. The knight desperately claims he was only following orders outside of the woods. Given turns back to mock Rizia, suggesting she has been fooled by imposters. The saintess looks down in frustration as her accusations are brushed aside so easily. A wide, mocking grin stretches across the noble's face as he rejects her plea. A veteran warrior from the Clausel household intervenes to demand a careful investigation. Given's face is obscured by shadows as he insists on moving the matter to the capital. The elder knight seethes with rage at the blatant attempt to bury the evidence. A low command to reveal the soldier's hand suddenly cuts through the noble's speech. Ren begins to pull himself upright while still leaning against Rizia's shoulder. The exhausted boy repeats his demand with a cold and unwavering intensity. Given's eyes widen slightly behind his lenses as he registers the boy's interference. He bristles with indignation at being addressed so casually by a wounded commoner. Ren looks up with a murderous glare that pierces through the guilty knight's facade. Given's eye narrows behind his spectacles as he senses the situation shifting out of his control. The entire assembly stands frozen beneath the vast mountain sky, while tensions reach a breaking point. Ren hangs his head in exhaustion as he struggles to stay conscious after the grueling ordeal. The boy suddenly slumps forward and rests his weight entirely against the saintess for support. Rizia gazes down at her companion with a mixture of deep concern and growing resolve. Her expression hardens as she prepares to deliver the final proof of the knight's betrayal. Pointing a steady finger toward the accused soldier, she demands that he reveal his hand. She confidently declares that a specific wound from their earlier skirmish will serve as undeniable evidence. The young knight's eyes bulge with terror as his secret is laid bare before everyone. A grizzled veteran from the Clausel household steps forward to enforce the saintess's demand. The soldier stammers a weak protest, while the suspicious Viscount watches the confrontation unfold. The elder warrior looms over the boy and repeats his order with a terrifyingly calm voice. Screaming in a fit of panic, the guilty man tries to claim the injury happened elsewhere. The veteran's face darkens with a murderous intent as he threatens to draw his blade. Sweat pours down the knight's face as he realizes there is no escape from the truth. A silent crowd of onlookers gathers in the background to witness the downfall of the corrupt knight. The soldier reluctantly begins unbuckling his gauntlet to reveal a bandaged palm underneath. Rizia watches with bated breath as the final piece of evidence is slowly brought to light. The heavy metal pieces of the armor clatter loudly onto the dusty ground. The veteran knight notes the ineffective healing potion used to hide the distinctive mark of the battle. The young soldier's eyes widen in terror as the weight of his guilt becomes undeniable. A seasoned warrior explains that wounds from holy magic leave traces that no potion can hide. Trembling with fear, the cornered knight grinds his teeth while sweat beads on his brow. Viscount Given observes the crumbling facade of his subordinate with a sharp, calculating gaze. He narrows his eyes and lowers his head as the situation turns against him. Suddenly erupting into a boisterous laugh, the official attempts to forcefully regain control of the scene. Baron Clausel watches the man's desperate performance with a look of silent contempt. An aggressive shout suddenly cuts through the air, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. Given bellows that the final judgment must take place in the capital under imperial law. The gathered onlookers react with shock as the official blatantly ignores the evidence provided. Ren stares in disbelief as he realizes the villain is simply forcing his way out. Rizia and the Baron stand frozen in shock while the corrupt party prepares to leave. Declaring that the entertainment has reached its end, Given dismissively turns away from the group. The Viscount's entire retinue begins their trek out of the castle grounds on horseback. Riding at the head of the group, Given maintains a cold and indifferent expression. Tears well up in Rissia's eyes as she watches her hope for immediate justice vanish. She reaches out a trembling hand in a desperate, silent plea to stop them. The long line of soldiers and carriages winds across the vast and lonely landscape. Given keeps his gaze fixed forward as he leads his men away from the castle. The steady beat of horse hooves echoes against the dirt as the caravan disappears into the distance. Rissia's eyes well with tears of frustration as she watches her only hope ride away. The sharp sound of rhythmic clapping suddenly cuts through the heavy atmosphere of the courtyard. Viscount Given pauses and glances back with a look of irritation and confusion at the interruption. Rissia turns her head toward the noise as her expression shifts from despair to startled curiosity. Baron Clausel looks on with a bewildered frown, his face slick with sweat from the tense confrontation. An elegantly dressed man stands with his back to the group, praising their courage and nobility. Stepping forward with measured confidence, the stranger's polished shoes click against the stone ground. Gesturing with a flourish, the newcomer reveals ornate daggers strapped to his finely tailored suit. He walks boldly through the center of the mounted soldiers, commanding the attention of everyone present. A subtle, knowing smile plays across the man's face as he adjusts his formal bow tie. Confused by the sudden presence of such a refined figure, Rissia asks for his identity. Bowing deeply, the man introduces himself as Edgar and asks the Saint Tess to leave matters to him. Raising a hand, Edgar explains that he wishes to assist in bringing this tale to its end. He turns his focus toward Viscount Given, announcing that he arrived on orders from his master. Given's face contorts with rage as he demands the name of the man's mysterious employer. Maintaining a calm and professional demeanor, Edgar reaches into his jacket to retrieve an item. He presents a magnificent dagger with a golden hilt, apologizing for his late arrival on the scene. Given's eyes widen in absolute horror as he recognizes the significant symbol on the weapon. A nearby soldier stares in stunned silence, his face pale upon seeing the unmistakable crest. The griffin emblem on the dagger shines brilliantly, signifying an authority that no one present can ignore. The man in the beret stares in disbelief, sweat beading on his forehead as he processes the weight of the crest. Standing amidst the soldiers, Edgar remarks that his identity shouldn't need further explanation given the evidence provided. Rissia watches the exchange with wide eyes, her earlier despair replaced by utter confusion at the sudden turn of events. Viscount Given snaps back in a fit of denial, accusing the newcomer of weaving an elaborate and dangerous lie. Edgar remains unfazed, coolly reminding the Viscount that forged noble crests carry a penalty of death. The weight of the situation sinks in as Given remains speechless, his face contorting with fear and fury. Addressing the Imperial representative, Edgar explains that he has been granted authority to act freely in this trial. Realization dawns on the official in the beret, his eyes trembling as he understands the magnitude of Edgar's backing. With a subtle smile, Edgar suggests that the current trial is riddled with too many inconsistencies to be valid. Given's heart pounds visibly as he stares at the messenger, the reality of his crumbling plan reflected in his wide pupils. Stuttering in shock, the official listens as Edgar declares his master's interest in the fate of House Clausel. He mentions a young boy named Ren Ashton, whose actions have earned a significant debt of gratitude. The messenger's gaze hardens as he confirms his intent to see this matter through to its absolute conclusion. A dark, imposing figure looms in the background, sitting upon a throne of absolute power and influence. Terrified by the mention of such a powerful backer, the official can barely keep his composure under Edgar's scrutiny. Viscount Given feels the walls closing in, his breathing becoming shallow as the political tide turns against him. He questions why someone of such legendary status would ever choose to intervene in this specific dispute. Visions of skeletal reapers seem to haunt Given as he realizes the sheer lethality of the forces now aligned against him. Edgar gestures broadly, claiming that the miracle performed by the youths moved his master to offer assistance. Given can only mutter the word in a daze, his face pale with the realization that a miracle has saved his enemies. A solitary figure sits by a sunlit window as Ren's heroic deeds are whispered in the distance. Rizia gazes forward with a lingering look of concern, while the chaotic trial finally concludes. The focus shifts as someone walks away from the scene of the intense confrontation. Edgar stands tall among the Imperial soldiers, his presence signaling the complete collapse of the opposition. A magnificent castle perched on a hillside represents the newfound safety of the Colossal family. Ren remains in a deep slumber, his body recovering from the immense strain of battle. Light catches his eyes as they slowly flicker open for the first time in days. Waking in a luxurious bed, Ren finds Rishia sleeping peacefully right beside him. He sits up and scans the ornate bedroom, trying to piece together his memories. Sensing his movement, Rishia's eyes fly open as she realizes he is finally awake. She immediately lunges forward and pulls him into a desperate, tearful embrace. While she sobs with relief, a startled Ren can only offer a small, blushing smile. The quiet dignity of the estate's exterior marks the end of the long-standing crisis. Ren reacts with pure astonishment upon hearing that he has been unconscious for a month. A hand extends toward him as the discussion moves to the legal fallout of the trial. Baron Clausel stands nearby, expressing his profound gratitude for Ren's intervention and bravery. The young boy listens intently while processing the news of his successful mission. The Baron explains that the evidence provided led to his swift and total exoneration. Meanwhile, the treacherous Viscount Given is shown fleeing the territory as his world crumbles. Unable to escape his crimes, the villain ultimately consumes poison to evade a public execution. Ren's eyes widen in shock as he hears the news about the villain's demise. He asks the Baron for clarification while sitting upright in his recovery bed. Meanwhile, a vision of a manor burning to the ground fills the air. The young boy looks deeply unsettled by the dark turn of events. Baron Clausel reveals that a powerful noble provided critical assistance during the trial. Ren tilts his head in confusion, wondering how such a high-ranking figure became involved. The conversation turns to the rare creature known as the Sea Wolfen. A majestic beast appears in memory, its parts being highly coveted for magical medicine. Ren recalls standing triumphantly over the monster he defeated during his travels. The Baron explains how he traded those materials for the Duke's political support. He mentions that the Duke's daughter has been suffering from a long-term illness. A silhouette of a lonely girl by a window illustrates her tragic plight. A formal invitation is produced, signifying a request for a personal meeting. Ren takes the dark card and examines it with a look of bewilderment. His gaze falls upon the ornate griffin crest of the House of Ignat. The Baron speaks the name of the prestigious and mysterious family aloud. Ren's pupils contract as a sudden, chilling memory flashes through his mind. He envisions a shadowy figure who serves as a legendary ultimate antagonist. A hand grips a sword over a graveyard, symbolizing the destruction to come. He realizes that the daughter's fate is the key to preventing a future rebellion. A silhouette of the lonely girl gazing out the window underscores the difficulty of saving her life. 1 week later, the scene shifts to the imposing exterior of the Clausel family manor. Ren's parents arrive and beam with joy at the sight of their safe son. They bring several bags of belongings salvaged from their burnt home into the room. His father smiles with pride, noting how impressively mature Ren has become lately. The young boy humbly dismisses the praise while continuing his quiet recovery. A sudden thought crosses his mind as he stares off into the distance. He remembers how his bracelet seemed to absorb magical power when he touched Rizia. A close-up of his wrist reveals the ornate bracelet, now devoid of any markings. He ponders why the device reacted so intensely the moment they made contact. A memory of the radiant magic sword manifesting in a burst of light appears. Later, the group arrives at the massive and heavily fortified estate of House Ignat. Risia expresses her happiness that his parents are doing well as they walk. The two stroll along a stone balcony overlooking the inner courtyard of the castle. Ren watches her with a serious expression, deep in his own internal investigations. Noticing his intense gaze, Risia turns and asks why he is staring at her. He quickly apologizes for his behavior and claims it was nothing of importance. Ren then asks if a magic stone is actually located inside of her body. She reacts with profound shock and demands to know how he learned that secret. He looks surprised by her outburst, while she wonders if her father revealed it. Ren quickly retracts his statement and explains he was merely making a lighthearted joke. Rizia remains visibly flustered, while clutching her dress as she processes his unexpected words. She decides to confide in him anyway, since she trusts him with her secret. Placing a finger to her lips, she reveals that only high-ranking saintesses harbor magic stones. Ren nods solemnly and promises to keep this classified information strictly between them. Turning away, he begins to contemplate the deeper implications of her startling revelation. He remembers a grim vision from a legend where he once carried a fallen ally. Memories of a ferocious beast being torn apart by overwhelming magical force flood his mind. He glances back at the girl while wondering how much the original story has diverged. Ricia tilts her head in confusion as she wonders why his mood suddenly turned somber. Rin internally questions whether his recent actions were purely for the sake of obtaining power. Looking out over the sprawling city, he reflects on the difficult path he has taken. His eyes narrow with determination while he weighs the heavy burden of his future choices. The vast urban landscape stretches before him as he considers his previous attempts at avoidance. He recalls saving his mother and realizes how much the past has already shifted. Further memories of his father's recovery and powerful adversaries flicker through his thoughts. He ponders if the tragic fate of the Ignat family can also be rewritten entirely, acknowledging that every single choice he makes sends ripples throughout this fragile world. A delicate hand suddenly reaches out toward his face in a gentle, reassuring gesture. Ricia softly touches his cheek and asks him if something is currently bothering him. Ren looks away in deep thought while pondering the heavy weight of his own existence. He expresses his confusion about his true identity while Ricia listens to his vulnerable confession. Ricia gazes at him with a soft expression that radiates deep warmth and kindness. She tenderly cups his face and declares that he is her one and only hero. Smiling gently, she calls him a bit unfair for saying such sweet and heart-fluttering things. Ren stares back at her in stunned silence as her sincere words take him by surprise. He slowly closes his eyes and finds a rare moment of peace within her presence. Far across the horizon, the grand white walls of the capital city shine brightly. Clouds drift lazily over the rugged peaks of the mountain range bordering the kingdom. The dense urban sprawl of the city below hums with the activity of daily life. A massive church tower looms over the surrounding architecture as a beacon of power. Deep inside the Imperial Academy, the ornate doors to the headmaster's office remain closed. Newspapers are scattered about with headlines reporting on the mysterious lights seen in the territory. A heavy atmosphere fills the headmaster's vast and silent library. As the day progresses, Cronoa Highland sighs while looking for someone who could potentially take over her tedious duties. Meanwhile, the capital becomes a hotbed for strange incidents and several unexplained deaths. An unknown victim lies lifeless on the pavement as the threat of violence grows. A night stands firm while citizens panic and shout about the rising waves of unrest. The common sense of the world is challenged by a series of seemingly irrational acts. Duke Ignat sits alone in his darkened hall while burdened by his own hidden grief. A frail noblewoman lies bedridden while awaiting a medicine that could save her life. Although Duke Ignat searches desperately for the rare ingredients required for her recovery, the Emperor heartlessly denies the request to use the materials held by the imperial family, leaving the Duke to face the silent judgment of the palace and its rigid laws. But the young girl eventually succumbs to her illness within the quiet of her room, fueling a burning hatred within Ignat as he mourns the loss of his beloved daughter. The memory fades into a stark and empty void as time passes by. A bright light washes over the scene as a new day begins in the capital. Leaves rustle gently against the clear sky above the sprawling estate of the Duke. An elderly butler carries a tea set across the courtyard toward his waiting master. Ignat sips his beverage while questioning the butler about the remarkable young man named Ren. The servant confirms that Ren Ashton possesses a value that cannot be measured in gold. Leaning back in his garden chair, the Duke admits that hearing such news eases his irritation. His loyal butler listens with a bowed head as the master reflects on past grievances. Ignat acknowledges that the Emperor prioritized the imperial line over the life of a child, yet he clarifies that logically, understanding a decision is far from emotionally accepting it. The butler remains silent as the Duke's gaze hardens with unresolved resentment and sorrow. Suddenly, A young girl's voice rings out across the garden as she approaches the table. Fiona runs forward with a radiant smile while being followed closely by her maid. The butler hurries to catch up as the daughter excitedly asks about the long journey. The elderly butler, Edgar, smiles while speaking politely to Fiona about her mother's influence. Fiona smiles back, explaining that her speech style is a direct result of her mother's upbringing. She expresses a desire to visit Crousel to thank Ren Ashton, but her father hesitates. Noticing his concern, Fiona suggests that sending a letter might be a more appropriate alternative. The Duke agrees that respecting the Baron of Crousel's wishes is currently the best course of action. Fiona looks down slightly with a soft expression, accepting her father's decision with quiet grace. High above the grand estate, birds fly through the clear sky as the afternoon passes by. Fiona gazes upward at the light, her mind filled with thoughts of the boy who saved her. She makes a silent vow to herself that one day she will certainly reach out, intending to meet him in person to express her deepest gratitude for his heroic actions. Meanwhile, Ren sits in deep thought as he contemplates the challenges that lie ahead of him. Night falls over the towering castle of Crousel, while stars twinkle under a crescent moon. Sitting alone in his moonlit bedroom, Ren stares at a mysterious, glowing orb on his desk. He experiments with a rare item called Sarakia's Blue Pearl, which begins absorbing his magical energy. Ancient text describes the object as an egg with a shell, harder than any legendary sword. The orb emits a blinding white light as it reacts to the immense power being channeled. Legend says that offering vast mana and a dragon's horn might trigger a successful hatching. Ren recalls game lore about a monster inside that once troubled the Demon King with Frost. Despite its potential, most players considered it a mere cash item because hatching it seemed impossible. Determined to succeed, Ren tightens his fist as a sudden knock echoes against his door. Ren turns around as Ricia peeks into his room, apologizing for the late-night visit. She smiles warmly while asking if he is still studying that strange glowing gemstone. Holding the orb, Ren explains that his parents brought it, and it even survived a fire. He thinks to himself that keeping the indestructible item safe is better than trying to sell it. Changing the subject, Ricia asks him directly how much longer he plans to stay in Crousel. Ren notes that his body has recovered well after sparring with her so many times lately. She listens intently, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and a hidden hope. The atmosphere in the room shifts as they discuss the possibility of him moving on. Surprised by her next words, Ren stares at her with a look of pure astonishment. Ricia boldly declares that they should spar at least 1,000 more times before he goes. He calculates that staying for that many matches would keep him there for years. She huffs and pouts, reminding him that her father already invited him to live there. Softening her voice, she looks down and admits she just wants him to stay longer. Ren remains silent for a moment, touched by the girl's genuine desire for his company. She waits anxiously for his response, her gaze fixed on the floor in front of her. He watches her quietly, feeling the sincerity behind her request to extend his visit. Finally relenting, Ren offers a small smile and agrees to stay for a bit longer. Their daily routine of training continues as they exchange strikes in the castle courtyard. They eventually head out into the heart of the city to enjoy some time together. Inside a tailor shop, Ricia surprises Ren by insisting on buying him a suit with her allowance. Ren reflects on the fulfilling days he has spent since arriving at the Crousel estate. While noticing a group of official knights on horseback riding through the city streets, he stops a passing guard to ask if the regular knight order is visiting. The veteran knight explains that a famous commander is inspecting the young lady's swordsmanship. He mentions that this prestigious leader is a renowned master of the Saint Sword technique. As they walk through the palace, the knight explains how many warriors aspire to this art. Various sword schools exist globally, offering powerful combat skills to those without natural magic. Ren considers his own potential, wondering if his gaming memories will help him master these arts. The knight admits he preferred the imperial sword style as it focuses on absolute defense. He kindly offers to teach Ren the basics of the imperial style himself. Ren thinks of Ricia's incredible talent, which has earned her the title of Sword Saint. It is a prestigious rank shared by only 5 legendary masters in the entire world. As they continue their stroll, Ren asks about other rare and powerful sword styles, He recognizes the strong sword style as a technique used by ancient royal enemies. Recalling his past knowledge, he remembers how players rarely had the chance to learn it. Dark memories of unavoidable damage and permanent stat debuffs fill his mind as he shudders. They reach the inner courtyard, where knights are actively engaged in high-level training drills. Ren stands quietly beside the massive armored knight while observing the intense combat maneuvers. Ricia spots him from across the field and excitedly calls for him to join. He politely declines the offer, deciding to stay back and study their movements instead. The commander smiles while mentioning he heard about Ren's incredible talent from the Saintess. He raises a finger and suggests they begin by testing Ren's basic skills first. Drawing a practice blade, the master invites Ren to engage in a light sparring match. Ren narrows his eyes with intense focus as he prepares to face the legendary warrior. The morning sun shines over the training grounds as the two combatants face each other. Their wooden swords meet with a sharp crack as they exchange the opening blow. A crowd of knights watches intently, while Ren continues his swift assault against the master. The commander effortlessly parries every strike, moving with a fluid grace that leaves Ren struggling. Despite Ren's speed, the master remains perfectly composed and easily blocks the incoming attacks. Pausing briefly, the commander advises Ren to stop imitating others and fight more naturally. Ren pauses in surprise, pondering the meaning of the master's cryptic words about his style. He realizes he has been subconsciously mimicking the Saint Sword techniques from his past life. Shifting his grip, Ren adopts a new stance that feels far more intuitive and powerful. He launches a sudden and unpredictable offensive that forces the commander to react quickly. The master begins to see the true potential hidden within the young boy's movements. A powerful sweep from the commander sends Ren flying back across the dusty courtyard floor. Watching from the sidelines, Ricia gasps in shock at the sheer intensity of the duel. The commander sharpens his gaze, finally beginning to take the training session more seriously. Ren quickly recovers and executes a perfect defensive parry against a heavy overhead strike. The master stares in utter disbelief that the boy successfully countered a guard-breaking maneuver. Ren and the commander stand apart as the dust settles from their intense clash. The commander smiles warmly and requests the young boy's full name. Introducing himself as Ren Ashton, the boy looks up with a curious expression. The master bluntly declares that Ren is ill-suited for the holy sword style. Wide-eyed with shock, Ren struggles to process the sudden and harsh criticism. Watching from behind, Ricia questions why such a strong warrior was rejected. The commander explains that Ren's past training has left him with ingrained habits. He suggests that forcing the holy sword style would only hinder Ren's growth. Gesturing calmly, the master explains the dangers of learning incompatible techniques. Ren ponders the advice, realizing the truth behind the master's sharp observations. He humbly requests that the commander teach him the fundamentals of swordsmanship instead. Ricia and the veteran knight observe the pair with deep interest and concern. The sun begins to set over the sprawling city walls of the capital. Inside the palace, a subordinate follows the commander and questions his cryptic choices. The commander reveals that Ren possesses a rare talent for an entirely different style. Later that night, Ren and Ricia sit quietly together in her private chambers. Ren asks if the Saintess found the day's training session to be useful. Closing her eyes, Ricia offers a short and somewhat dismissive reply to him. He observes her closely and asks why she became so grumpy during the match. He points out her specific habit of playing with her hair when she is annoyed. Ricia reacts with visible shock and embarrassment as Ren points out her nervous habit. She quickly looks away, her face flushing red while she struggles to find a retort. Frustration bubbling over, she argues that the commander's rejection of Ren felt like an insult. Ren offers a gentle smile and tells her not to worry about his training progress. Taking a deep breath, Ricia closes her eyes and prepares to share her honest feelings. She admits that her own swordsmanship has developed habits very similar to Ren's style. The young boy tilts his head in confusion, surprised by this unexpected revelation from the Saintess. Ricia explains that she spent countless hours studying his every move in order to surpass him. She holds out her hand, noting that even her physical movements have mirrored his training. Pulling her knees to her chest, she confesses that the commander's words felt like a rejection. Ren interjects by telling her to focus on her own path instead of worrying about him. Smiling softly, she suggests that perhaps the Holy Sword isn't the only way for her. Ren remains quiet, reflecting on the heavy expectations placed upon the young saintess's shoulders. Rizia turns the question back to him, asking if he could easily discard his father's teachings. A brief memory of Ren's father giving him a sword flashes through his mind. Rizia points out that their situations are far more similar than he realizes. He tries to argue that as a saintess, she has different responsibilities compared to him. She counters by saying her father encourages her to find a style she truly loves. Looking at her with newfound respect, Ren is struck by her determination to define herself. Risha concludes that starting a new path might be the key to achieving true strength. Ren stares intently as he realizes Risha is an individual with her own will, not a game character. He then kindly promises to help her discover a swordsmanship style that perfectly matches her unique spirit. A soft smile touches Rizia's lips as she prepares to refine his words with a heartfelt sentiment. Their shared moment concludes under the moonlit sky as she suggests their path belongs to both of them.